Yeah, good. All right, good evening. September 6th, 2023. Welcome to the Road Advisory Committee meeting. Patrick. Call to order at, let's see, what time is it? Sorry about the 6:33. Not too bad.
Nice scramble again.
Yeah, thank you. Patrick, roll call. Or Bob, which one do you want?
Kerry.
Present.
Hubert. Present. Shields.
Present.
Walsh. Present. Groden. Here. 2 minutes absent. Nichols has left. Smith.
Present.
Roy Townsend is absent.
No, I took Don's name out of the Granicus and keeps popping up. Okay, and speaking of Don, we do need another member. So Kathleen, if you know of anybody or anybody, we'll put it back on, we'll put a banner up on the website, I guess. Okay. Adoption of the agenda. Does anybody have nothing? The only thing I'm going to suggest is that Adam Lape from WCRC will be here at 7. So if we could maybe move the minutes up and at least, yeah, the minutes and go from there. Can just knock that off. Just looking for little things that we can do, but let's put that under or right before presentations or discussions. So what is that? E3. Well, it would have to it would stay the same. Where is it? Okay, I1, just move I1 above F.
Yeah. We'll
Okay.
I1 F and shift everything else down 1.
Okay. And public comments? Adoption, let's see, anything else on the agenda? I don't think we'll have enough time to get through anything else with public comments and minutes. Okay.
I'll move to adopt the agenda with one revision, moving the minutes up.
Second, Patrick, you said that, okay. We just take a voice vote for that?
Sure.
All in favor? Say aye. Aye. Public comments, anybody? Nope, okay, that's present, no? Anybody on Zoom?
Are there any public comments? Right now, I'm a bit rusty, but there are no hands raised that I'm seeing.
Nope. Okay. Wow. Well, we'll wait till the last and see what happens there. Communications and correspondences, any information that you want to share with that or questions, insights?
Do we want to add the letter that Jeff sent through to everyone on Monday, Tuesday about the sidewalks, or I'm sorry, crossing at Scio Church?
Well, I was going to include that in the next packet because I need to respond to them, but there's a little bit of information I have to find. And I thought maybe, well, no, I guess WCRC really isn't involved with that because it's a MDOT. But no, it's not MDOT, it's for the Scio Church Road, WCRC would be involved. We need to talk with them. And I guess that has come up in the past. I don't know how many years ago, and WCRC was not in favor of it because there's Uplands Drive. And then if you stayed on our side of, the township, and then you went over, and then there's a light, there is a culvert needs to go in. you know, there's a retention or detention pond and they don't want to do that. Now, this was in the past, we can, that's why I wanted to get more information before, and then I'll be able to respond to the two that had emailed, and then that would go into the packet for next time.
Do we have any updates on the park and Stabler?
The last, there was a meeting with the developer. It was our township attorney, all of that, yeah. And since then, there was supposed to be meetings between the developer and the residents, and I have not heard anything back about that.
Or have I?
No, okay. That's right, yeah. So you would be part of that, I would assume.
Nothing has come in the mail, so.
Okay, so I guess, yeah, I will talk with Joyce about it because she's involved in all of this. But I think it's just kind of quiet right now. There won't be any construction probably for at least well, definitely this season, but not next season either. Depending on, it has to go back to the planning commission as a major amendment, but there's other things that have to happen before. There's some plans that OHM needs to look at, and a couple different plans. And then if other permitting entities have to get involved, that could drag it out even longer, but they're hoping that they can avoid that. Because Eagle, it took them 2 years to get a permit from Eagle regarding Honey Creek. So that's that for now. I mean, things are on hold, so.
But do we know why that happened the way it did?
The only thing that they could figure out is that, well, the developer developed the area, but then they had the builders, two different builders that, you remember?
Lombardo and.
The first, Toll Brothers. Yeah, they were the first one, then Lombardo, and the developer said that more than likely it was the builders that did not share with the homeowners. But they said it was in their master plan or deed, and all the homeowners should have known about it, but I looked at all the plans going back to 2015, and it was not, you know, the big maps that they have, there was nothing in there. So there was some type of either lack of communication, miscommunication, or just missed conversations.
So what's the township's responsibility in that, and what do we do to take corrective action?
Well,
So it
that's
doesn't happen again.
right.
What's the process?
Well, that's where we have, now that we have a manager, and our planner should be involved. So that's, yeah, there's more to do, more work to be done regarding the planning process and polishing that up for the township. So
Who's got that task?
Joyce.
Doesn't that come through the planning commission as well when they look at site plans? Yeah, I don't know how it slipped through the cracks, but.
Yeah, and this was two boards ago and 2 planning commissions ago. So, you know, as it unfolds, and then we had COVID, which, you know, got in the way.
But there should be a written process for developers and builders.
I agree. I don't know. I'm assuming there is.
That should be something we can pull off the shelf. Regardless of different administrations and all that.
So Linda, when you went through the development process and you had changes, I know that you were in front of the board not too long ago.
But these changes, the difference is that the change to Park and Stabler is not internal to their development. So what they're proposing now changes their development. I understood that it was a result of the original drawings did not impact the development. It sounded like Eagle, when they went to try and get their wetland permit or their stream crossing permit, changed what they would allow, which then moved the road to where it has landed in this most recent iteration. Yes, they probably should have come back to the planning commission or the board with an amendment to their master deed, because the drawing of where their roads internally didn't change. but the outline of their property did.
which ended up in the development. So, yeah, so that,
It's a very gray area as to how that should be handled. Once a development's in process and your master deed's been adopted. And phase was in process. I mean, that phase was almost completely built out
mhm,
in that corner anyway.
mhm. Yeah, people had already moved in, it seemed, or started to move in. Yeah, and-
Bob and I went out there right after the meeting,
Mhm.
the next morning. And there were several people just very upset. And they had bought property, thinking that they actually paid extra money for that corner. That was what they were going to do too. Why were they mad? Again, it's all kinds of lack of communication. I don't know what our role in it is. It seems like communication issues are one of the big things that we end up trying to struggle with in this committee. With you, Bob, what do we do to, maybe we need to come up with a policy that would suggest about communication, or probably it's just people, I don't know, but
Mhm.
I just, kind of upset that we keep getting these kinds of issues, and
Mhm.
there should be things we can do.
Yeah, and sitting down with the road commission, because there was all these projects that had happened and there was a lot of complaints. It was they weren't finished with the project, but none of us knew that. And we agree that there's a lack of communication and education. So that's why we've invited them, but we could do a lot better. And,
Who signed off on the original site plan? There were drawings
oh, this would have
for the
been,
development.
But
And
this was
somebody
a
at the
design,
township had to sign off on
but the road changed.
that. Wait, you're not following my logic.
I am.
I know you
Somebody
are.
changed
This is
something
how we do it in the
somewhere.
engineering world.
Didn't
Yeah.
tell anybody.
so
You
this
know,
would have
You have a
been,
drawing
It's almost like it just,
and the right people sign off in the legend box.
Yeah.
And then before they can make any kind of change, they've got to go back to those same folks and say, we're making a deviation. Those people have to approve it or not.
yeah.
So who was it that approved the original site plan that showed the road going this way? And then they had to go back when they moved the road. And they didn't do that.
yes, they didn't come back. So
Okay.
there's oversight from the township, right? Is it OHM or planning, the planner that oversees to make sure that, because you have a community benefits and everything that needs to be done.
I don't want to point fingers, but arguably there were more than one agency involved with this that could have pointed out to the township that there was a change.
That's no excuse. It's letting them off the hook.
Mhm.
You know, if you don't get to the bottom of it and chase it and put a procedure in place, it will happen again and again and again.
And this is a little bit of an unusual situation too, because usually you have if there's a change to the road, the change of the road happens and then the build out of the development, if I understand correctly. But this was different because of the Honey Creek and the Eagle permit took longer, so they started building and yeah,
But you see, the process, that should be irrelevant to a process. Once you have a site plan that shows the roads and the township signs off on it, whether it be a township engineer or the planning commission, that's the Bible. In order to change that Bible, they gotta go back to the people that signed off on it.
What they actually changed was the common area of the HOA. They didn't change any of their internal roads in the site. It was a public road, which is now impacting the common space.
They changed the road. We saw that.
Yes, but
You saw
that
the
road,
drawings.
that road was not a part really of their original master deed.
It's part of Scio.
Yes.
And I'm saying Scio should be responsible for everything that goes on within Scio.
well,
There
that's,
should be Scio, a township engineer, or the planning commission that signs off on that. You can't just let anybody come in and willy-nilly decide to do what they want.
yeah, I agree. And so in Township Hall, we all know that there's been a lot of issues, lack of staff, lack of department heads, and we're getting that together. I mean, now we have a
Okay,
finance.
And that's where I'm asking, okay, so who's going to be responsible for the corrective action and put a process in place and say, I'm the one doing it?
Well, that should be the planning department and the planning commission.
It's not telling me who's responsible, it's saying who should be. It doesn't mean they have the assignment.
I would assume that Doug Luan and,
All right,
The
right
chair.
there, when you say assume, we're done.
well, I don't know what to tell you.
Well, I'm just explaining to you, Jillian, the way things really work.
Yeah, I
okay?
understand that,
People
but
get-
I'm not the one in
people
charge
get
over here.
assignments, and they take responsibility, and then they have accountability to see those assignments get done. And we don't make assumptions, and we don't say it should be this or should be that, because that's how things fall off the table.
So
And
now that
all I'm
we.
asking is, something went wrong here,
Mhm.
and these people were really upset. And, well, who's taking that on as a project to say, what are we gonna do as a township to fix the process?
And we are in the works of doing that with our new manager. We have a lot of different fires to put out in this township.
Okay, so she has a list that I can see the list, and this is on the list of things to do.
Yeah,
Yeah, or we make a recommendation from this board, which is this is something that needs to, not happen again. You need a procedure to do it.
Mhm.
And then that
Well,
way it
and-
doesn't fall off the radar from us
I
having
mean,
this discussion.
we have a lot of rules in Scio that we don't follow. We have a lot of ordinances we don't follow. So it comes back to the board and getting our,
Yeah.
so. And Joyce I have to say, she's been amazing. She's done a lot in a short period of time under really hard circumstances.
I think that the most prudent way to deal with this is probably going to go back to a position that actually is, I believe, unfilled at this time, which is an ordinance officer.
You're right.
There needs to be a township employee who, when they see something, can I use the word hinky, brings it up and presents it to the township manager, and then steps are taken. And that can be garbage in the ditch where it shouldn't be from a development, or stakes, survey stakes that don't appear to be in the right place, or a sign that shouldn't have been put up because there's no permit for it. It's an ordinance officer eyes and ears.
Yeah, and so that's, speaking of, we've had to, Joyce did put out a call for application, I guess, I don't know what that's called exactly, for ordinance officer. We had 2 nibbles. And so, and then there's another option. What was that?
Our guest is coming.
Okay,
Going back to Bob's point, I think maybe we could suggest to Joyce that that be added to the ordinance officers.
well, yeah, and then there's the police ordinance part of the,
Yes.
and then there's the zoning ordinance, so we may have 2 different. But yes, that's on her list. I am in her office once a week, giving her, because when I get complaints that.
Give her tangible, our suggestion, we see this as still an open issue, but we think this could have been avoided.
We have a township engineer,
Yes.
OHM and Washoe Engineering.
who's responsible for things like this.
Washington Engineering wasn't involved in this.
We subcontract the engineering. Isn't that right?
Yes.
Yes,
So
so we don't have our own in-house.
we don't have our own engineer.
So the idea would be that these folks at Trailwoods see what's happening, they call the township, Christie answers the phone and say, okay, you need to talk to the ordinance officer, I'll leave a message, and they will get back to them. Is that kind of how we imagine it would work?
Nah, we have a planning committee that signs off on a blueprint for a plan. If anything deviates from that plan, they need to sign off on whatever the deviation is. That's,
But they have to know about
If
it.
But
they're
if that
made aware of it.
Exactly, if that doesn't happen, the first people that are gonna see it is the folks on the road, on the street.
if a developer wants to develop in Scio Township, the rules and regulations are, you submit a plan to the planning committee. They need to be fully aware that if they make a change, they have to bring it back to the planning committee. We shouldn't be policing bad behavior. We should be coaching, this is how you develop in Scio Township. It's a chicken and the egg.
It's very unclear, and there is not a good list. that
This,
gives the
this
developers
is,
how it
this
should
is
be
why I
done.
think Bob and I are chasing this. It's like, we're looking at the symptoms. We're not looking at what's fundamentally missing. I make an engineering drawing, somebody signs off on it, I change it, you can have it signed off again. That's what the developer needs to understand. And they obviously went rogue with Eggle and whoever. And we end up taking the flak for it. So the way to not get the flak for it is to make sure that the developers, if you want to develop in Scio Township, here are the rules and regulations. If you change the plan, you have to come back to the planning committee. That's what we should be chasing. And then we don't need the ordinance officer to be chasing these things.
Okay.
I'm proposing one of what could be a million different solutions. The point is let's not go after, let's go after the root cause, which is there's no procedure in place.
Well, and I believe there is a procedure, but it still needs to, this has been brought up, and I know that the township is working on this. Joyce is very well aware, Clerk Jessica. So I will bring it up to her and see where we are in that revamping the process or whatever we call it.
And I think what we're looking for is that
It's very unusual.
There's something that comes from this committee that is tangible and actionable, which is, this is broken, please investigate it. And then the response is, we hear you, we're looking at it, we hear you, here's a solution, whatever it is.
Okay. Our guest is here, but we have a few minutes, so let's get through the minutes. Is there anything else that you want to contribute about this conversation? Okay, I will get back with where we are in this plan.
I see on here this East Delhi complaint.
Mhm.
I know what they're talking about. I was walking down, we went to Skips that day, we walked down the street. And we were watching them do this and wondered what the heck they were doing.
Yeah, and it wasn't just there, it was on West Delhi as well.
Yeah, Adam will explain that later in his presentation.
That's probably okay if there was communication, like, hey, knock on the door. All right,
well.
don't get me started on this.
Okay, we move to the minutes? The draft minutes?
Does anything need to be said about the Liberty Road Bridge as item E2? Or we just,
It's just
in the packet, we're moving on.
Yeah, it's because people that live in that area and
Okay.
there's really nothing, it's not our jurisdiction, it's not the road, I mean, it's the MDOT. And so all the information that we know is in this packet.
Yeah. So
But I was thinking about putting that on our RAC page.
I think that would be an excellent
Yeah.
idea.
Right. The high level summary is they've got a contractor in place,
That's the
I already-
first I'd heard of it.
and there was a meeting on the 14th of August, I believe, with the public to review it. They're trying to get it done by late December, I want to say, but that it's a challenge because of the sourcing of the beam that they have to put over the span of the bridge. So there are going to be some weekends where they're going to shut it down to try and accelerate the work, and that they were trying to avoid the U of M games. That I read all the emails, and that really came out in that thread was, don't do it on a game weekend.
Right.
And they've heard that. And that there was some proposal to divert traffic back towards Jackson Road and go that way. So
Yeah, that'll be interesting.
it's kind of happening is what I'm hearing, but the end of the pain is not going to be until December. And there are 3 different pours of concrete that they've got to have it shut for a reasonable duration of time to do that.
So if you have a truck, make sure it can fit under a bridge. Jeez.
Does your fit under a bridge?
Yes, even the Dexter Bridge over there. Yeah, so that's actually some really good news. There's some movement on that and for everybody that lives in that area. All right, so regarding the minutes, did anybody,
As a point, since our guest is here, we can go back to the original agenda and just cover the minutes later.
oh, were there any changes though? Did anybody have? I mean, if we don't have any, we can just,
Stamp it and go on. I'm
Yeah.
good with that.
I didn't find any.
I didn't either.
Okay, voice vote?
Motion first.
Oh, yes, right.
I
Okay.
said aye to the voice vote.
I guess that's the second, huh? But no, we have
I
to.
move that we approve the minutes.
Move to approve the minutes, second, yes.
Okay. All in favor? Aye. Okay. I think most of this packet is correspondence. Here we go. Adam,
Yeah.
I put down about 45 minutes. It probably don't need that long, but
Yeah, I'll try to kind of go quick and then I guess first introduce myself. Maybe I don't know if you have anybody.
Are you on the Zoom, Adam? Like,
I can be if you'd like. I actually have an email set with the PDF of a PowerPoint with like just general, real quick abbreviated 101 slides that I could send everybody since you're all on a tablet.
yeah, I
And you
mean,
could
if I
share it
can
if
get
you'd
it, I
like.
can display it,
Yep.
and then that people who are
Yep.
not here can see it.
Just a couple seconds should show up there. I sent it to the advisory committee and then back to Jillian and I attached Joyce as well, but so it should come to either of you guys emails.
okay, I may have missed that one.
No, I literally just
Oh, you
hit
just
send.
sent it,
Yep,
okay. You
Yeah.
have-
because I wanted you guys to be able to kind of see it quick and easy that way.
Through the RAC mechanism, yeah, but I don't have it.
Okay. Might take a second, and I just made it a PDF, so it's easily to put up on Zoom for you that way.
Yeah. Are you still logged in on that computer?
Thank you. You have for the community, most of you probably have this already, or maybe kind of look through it, but it's our local road packet for this year. I brought some copies of that for everybody. We'll refer to it a little bit, but really it's just kind of a good source of information for most townships in general, but especially if, you have committee members that come on or a little newer to roads. And that's also on our website. I can help direct you guys there if need be as well. There you go. Thank you. You're welcome. Sure, thank you. And I have a few extras if we need them after I leave. You guys can keep them.
Great, thank you, thank you. Yeah.
I hacked your email and sent it to myself.
Oh, okay.
Did that work for you?
I haven't got it yet, but
Oh, I'm sorry. Here, let me make sure we're,
it should come, I think.
okay. My computer must be tired this evening.
And Ian, can you please change the camera so we can see Adam as well? Thank you.
Oh,
Yep.
I can move also if that's helpful. I don't know.
no, we have the.
Okay.
Play with, yeah, of course, the camera buttons usually work, but today.
It's time for Rob to come in with a suggestion.
I don't hit the buttons and nothing's happened.
Oh, really? Gosh, I even came in early to get that thing set up and it just.
It is, isn't it? Just hit that. No,
Is it?
unless it's.
There we go.
Adam, you are now famous.
Right.
Sure.
All right.
Yeah, I don't have it yet.
Oh, you don't? Okay.
So,
Like my Zoom just dropped off. So just carry on and
Okay.
I'll pop around in the background.
Okay, and let me know, I can try to send it again if need to. Well, first off, thank you for having us from the Road Commission today. I'm Adam Labe. I'm the Director of Operations over at the Road Commission. And so we came over and talked with Joyce and Jillian and Matt Parks here a few weeks ago, and kind of thought it'd be a good idea to come back and just really start from the ground up and talk about Roads 101. Really start with a little bit of who we are at the Road Commission, kind of our daily process, and then, you know, open up for some questions about local road program projects specifically and kind of the process we take on every summer when we start those. So myself, I've been with the Road Commission, starting my 10th year now. Was a superintendent of maintenance until last year when Mr. Harmon retired, which was Director of Operations for 12 years or so. And then was lucky enough to be promoted. So now kind of taking one step up to the Director of Operations role. So that brings us to today. So I would like to cover a little bit, and you'll see in the PDF if it gets to you, and I apologize for it not being here. It should find its way through the email, but just for anybody joining virtually, I'd like to talk about that overview of the Road Commission and kind of who we are, how many miles we maintain, break out the jurisdictions a little bit. So township, you know, primary local roads, and then what we've done with townships recently, just a quick note on that, and then really get into improving roads. And that's where Scio Township is a little bit ahead of other townships because there's been an established roads committee for almost 10 years now. Made it through the full SAD process. So there's been quite considerable amount of improvements over the last 10 years. Did you get it, Bob?
Yeah.
Did it find its way? Okay. I sent it to the advisory committee email.
And my computer's just dropped the internet connection. I don't know why.
Oh.
That's why I'm struggling. I can do it from that machine.
Yeah, let's make it, I think if we made Adam
I can share this screen, I think.
are you logged into Zoom?
I am not, but I can jump on real quick.
I've got it on your email, so I should be able to open it from here.
Okay. There we go. Intentionally Control L may give you an opportunity where, no, okay. They won't do that live, sorry. Sometimes it opens it up a little bit more, but
Yes.
okay. But yeah, so we are about 3 slides in, just kind of talking about the topics here. Yeah, apologies for getting to see me more than you probably want to see me already, so. Yeah, there you go, yeah. Zoom into that, everybody at work think that's hilarious. So, I know, yeah, everybody, well, I think the kids have made it like less,
I'm a
but
little jealous. You know?
yeah. Yeah, it kind of stands on its own. That's I guess the country in me a little bit, but anyway, so we're kind of on the topics to cover here. And then we'll jump to the next here and kind of our overview. So we refer to it as kind of a stat sheet for us, but the next slide here, you'll see, you can go ahead and transition to that. We're responsible for 1,600 lane miles, 1,652 to be exact. Nearly 750 of unpaved lane miles throughout the county. 125 bridges, you know, nearly 3,000 culverts, and those are just known. There are other culverts that small size diameter culverts we may not even know about yet because some are so historic and they've been around so long. You don't usually find them until they fail. And we have a very established system where we'd like to say we've probably noted most of them and recorded most of them, but nonetheless, there are many out there that we may not know of. But they're all small scale at this point. All of the large scale culverts we know of because we have inspections for them and kind of.
Are those annual inspections?
Depending on the size and also depending on condition ratings as the years go through. And
You
so
kind of have like a pacer rating for culverts?
basically, yep. And then we have a consultant engineer that does inspection on our bridges and larger structures like that, larger culverts. And you'll see some of that information in the local road packet that I handed to the committee. Some of that information, we usually present that every spring. So update the information, kind of keep that out there and keep that fresh in the front and the foreground for everybody in case we get to a point where we have large scale culverts or large structures that could fail, where we need the partnership and try to stay ahead of that, try preventative maintenance to stay ahead of that. So really in Scio Township, we're in pretty good order. the ARPA grant program is available, and hopefully we can build that with the township for next year. There's a relatively simple culvert replacement on West Delhi for less than $50,000 that we'd like to partner with and move on. That was something we started talking about last year a little bit with the township. But a lot of transition, so we understand, and it's still there. It's not, the road's not closed or falling apart or anything, but something we need to consider moving forward. And then Park Road, basically east of Zeb Road here, there's a larger culvert that would be more, labor intensive to replace that, more permitting. So those two are the ones that we've suggested through the ARPA program that the township evaluate. And Will and Joyce both aware of that, and we're kind of getting Joyce up to speed on that. So, but that's something, just so the Roads Advisory Committee has a little understanding of that, kind of where we start. So back to answer the simple, easy question, yes, we do inspect the larger culverts, usually 3 to 4 foot and above, larger. The smaller culverts, we usually just visual inspection, or we replace them during local road program project.
And quickly, the second phase of the ARPA fund grant, when is that due? Did they come back with that?
They should release by the end of the year an opportunity, or basically open up to be applied for again. So, so look for the end of the year, last few months of the year here to get that notification, and then we'll start working with the township. Inevitably, the township has to apply, but our engineering staff will assist, kind of gather the information, and that's essentially where we are. We've provided information, inspection information, and kind of estimated cost. So really then it's, what the township, can afford to go after, and that'll be more of a board decision at that point because it's funding allocation, but they may look to your group to help kind of maybe get out and get some eyes on it. And just kind of confirm where the township wants to go with, specific to the local road program.
Good.
You're welcome. Okay, so, and then obviously a little bit further down here, over 31,000 signs. We keep very busy. Our sign shop is very busy. We try to systematically replace them as best we can on a little bit of a program. But signs usually have about a 6 to 10 year lifespan, provided a tree, a car, something or another doesn't knock it over, damage it, or someone decide they want to take it. And we see that occasionally as well. So we keep really busy with that. And we have a staff from our traffic and safety department. Really, it's a team of 4. So they are very busy, 4 with 2 trucks and 1 foreman. So we're pretty busy sometimes keeping up with the signs. Thankfully, our sign system itself is pretty good, pretty robust. So they're resilient. We have good signs and they're put in good positions where they can be. And we try to keep trees away from them as best we can to kind of extend their life a little bit. But unfortunately, things happen on the road and incidents occur where they get hit and fall down. So we respond to those just like we would respond to a fallen tree in the evening hours. So we have a crew that's on staff to respond to those emergencies as well. And then also the road commission is contracted by MDOT to maintain almost 600 miles of the MDOT routes throughout the county as well. So we have a crew that's specific to maintenance on MDOT, which comes out of this main yard here on Zeb Road. It's a crew of 11. Then in the wintertime, when we're required to do a little bit more for snow and ice, we bring 20 people onto those routes. So we have 20 MDOT routes during the day, during snow and ice. So we kind of grab people from all throughout the county then for that. But the day-to-day maintenance crew comes out of this yard here because we're centrally located. And they are very busy. Unfortunately, a lot of incidents, and that's why we leave the picture with the guardrail there. That's our beloved Barton off ramp, if anyone doesn't recognize that. So we, judging the way traffic works, we keep very nice rail there because it's usually brand new. Unfortunately, we're there routinely. Thankfully, no one has hit it while we're holding on to it yet. What's that?
Do you get a volume discount?
I wish. At this point, we could probably make our own rail. But MDOT is conscious. They're working on that and trying to figure out where that ends up. But thankfully, that's a little beyond our maintenance side of it. We just maintain what's there right now and keep things as safe as we can and keep that guardrail up. But so they're very busy. That crew responds to accidents, that the Scio Fire Department may end up on out between here and Jackson Ave, or excuse me, the Jackson Curve there. So we keep really busy, kind of coordinate with the township in ways that most people wouldn't expect. But with all township fires all through the freeway system, we have a really good relationship with townships on the other side of that. And so the first responders, they're kind of out there, and then our crew tries to help keep them safe. And so we keep pretty busy on the MDOT side of things. We mainly do the maintenance of traffic during incidents, but we try to be there as best we can to also help support the fire department, just because they're exposed, as you know, while they're out there, and we can't always be there for small incidents because we may be plowing snow and try to keep the snow off the road. So it becomes a bit challenging, but we keep busy with that. Then we'll go down to the next slide and really compare routine maintenance versus road improvement projects, which is really where the local roads advisory committee comes in, especially in Scio. And that's proven, how successful we've been here and how much road work we've done in just even the 10 years I've been here. So routine maintenance is what you would see on our day-to-day. So one of our graders scraping a road, pothole patching on a paved road, stone patching on an unpaved road. So our day-to-day routine maintenance. Snow and ice also falls in the routine maintenance. And then our mowing, we have mostly contracted mowing, but our roadside mowing, we have a contract that does that. So that's considered routine maintenance. And then you come into road improvement, which I'll touch on a little further as we go now. I'll give you some actual pictures to show some examples. So upgrades, extensions of a road, enhancements to any existing road. Really, enhancements gets to paving it, adding a drain system, a curb and gutter drain system, big changes like that, signalization. Those are the larger scale, truly improvements. We can go to the next page here where we kind of touch on what I just talked about, routine maintenance. So I'll kind of scroll down and we'll keep going to the road improvements so you can see a little bit about that. And so the next one will be road improvements. And once we get to that screen, you'll see this is actually Zeeb and Liberty. So it really fitting, this was unintentional. This actually worked. We presented this to the local township supervisors in March. And so I've condensed it down for our group here tonight. But we had the Liberty and Zeeb picture there. So it fit today when I was looking through it because it's in Scio Township. Obviously primary road to a local road, or at least local road to the west there. But a good example of that's where a road improvement, that's a change. So it changed an enhancement to the existing surface. So roundabouts would be an example, a bridge replacement would be an example, widening a road, paving a road, which obviously a topic that's, been across the roads advisory committee's desk, at least for some review. Limestone resurfacing, which you're all very familiar with because that's typically what we see in the local road program. Just because we have so many local road unpaved miles, we do a good majority of our work limestone resurfacing based every season throughout the county. And then obviously signs and signal upgrades, those are usually more in-house. That's that systematic replacement I talked about of those 31,000 signs where the sign crew will, it could be a list of 1,000 signs for a year, it could be 2,000, it could be 500, it really depending on what part of the county they're working on and what type of sign is getting the replacement. So they'll have a replacement project, but that's done in-house most times. Very, very frequently, we manage that ourselves. And then drainage improvements. So drainage improvements can range from just replacing a small culvert, cleaning out ditches, cutting the shoulder, which we refer to as berming. Sometimes you've probably seen on some of the weekly roadwork schedules. Really just trying to improve that drainage, get the water away from the road. That's usually our kind of number one. We want a road to have a good surface. And it's usually crowned. So it has basically the middle of the road. And the idea is to sheet water off the sides. Well, as over time and debris builds up, you end up with a shoulder. Sometimes we refer to it as a country curb. But basically the shoulder becomes taller than the road surface. And the water has nowhere to go. So it basically just kind of sits there. And that's rough on our roads because it can inadvertently soak in and then saturate the outside shoulder of that road. You start to see the potholes building real quickly. And that's unpaved and paved roads where it would fail like that. You also see that underneath heavily dense treed areas. Underneath a tree, you're going to see potholes. Most people don't realize it and correlate everything, but if you put a tree in the middle of a road out in the middle of nowhere, so if you went, let's say you continued on west on Park Road from Zeeb, before you got to the corner where you would go south, it opens up in those cornfields there before you get back to Liberty. If you put a tree right in the middle there are a few trees that stand alone out there. I think a few big oak trees, there's potholes under those. There won't be potholes on the rest of the portion of the road. It lays wet in the wintertime just a little bit longer because it's shaded. And so, and also the roots from the trees, it keeps the earth a little unstable underneath there because it's just moving a little here and there. So kind of interesting thing, I'd maybe call it road commission science, but it's really interesting to see how trees affect roads. So that's why we always make the goal to try to keep the road dry. So that's why the canopy clearing comes in, and we don't need to take every inch of tree. We just need to give it room to get some air. And so that's where you see us presenting, a project where we'd like to trim the canopy or remove dead trees or dying trees before we put stone on the road or before we pave it, whatever the case may be. So that's kind of tying in drainages all to that point, but nonetheless, you inevitably get to a point where you need to get the water from the road out to the ditch. Sometimes you'll hear it referred to as daylight to ditch. And really all that means is just a smooth surface to take the water off the road and actually get it into the grass and get it into the ditch where it's supposed to be conveyed to whichever direction, whether it be uphill, downhill, wherever the water decides to go at that point. And then your culvert system transfers that water underneath the road, underneath driveways, kind of moves it where things have been built in place of it or where water used to naturally flow. So a driveway is, unless it's at the very highest point of a road, it needs a culvert because it needs to be able to get water underneath it. Because most times there's a ditch or something close to it that's trying to move the water away, and you don't want to trap it because it ends up in the driveway. And so that's why you see a lot of permitting, the permitted access. Really, that permitting process starts with you're permitted to access the road, but also you're basically permitted to cross the ditch. Now, it's not always the case because you have some flat areas where that's irrelevant. You just have kind of a swale, and the best to describe that would be Dell Road, more on Lodi Township, but it flattens out a little bit. And so the road basically sheds the water off into, we refer to as swales, which are very just shallow, little smooth ditch. We just try to get the water over there and then it usually soaks in within a day or two and off you go. But yeah, so kind of a lot weighs on our drainage improvement. That's really the core of everything. We need a really solid road base to start, but if we can't keep it dry, it inevitably stays saturated or freezes and thaws really fast and can't do one or the other quick enough, and then it becomes inefficient, and then you get to a point where your road starts failing quicker. And so that's why you see roads that haven't had limestone on them for 10 or more years are usually more saturated. They seem to get scraped and put together with dust control, and then they go right back to bumpy or kind of chattery, kind of washboarded really quick. It's because they can't really maintain a good structure. And it really all comes back to maintaining the drainage. A good example would be, since, in Scio, this is a great example to talk about this year on Park Road. Initially with all the changes we had planned on, and this is from the Roads Advisory Committee and working with Will as well, and Mark before his time expired. The intention was to just add 6 inches of limestone, basically a lift, just enough on Park Road to match up to any changes that were going to occur down at the subdivision. And obviously there's a lot of change there, a lot of stuff to be discussed. So that changed a little bit. So by then we had already planned and had our stone scheduled and the crews were prepping. And so we added stone there and didn't get to do our full project that we normally do, where we remove the shoulder, reestablish ditches, everything we would normally propose with to do a road improvement project if we didn't expect it to eventually be paved. So we spread the stone in there and it rained the very next day and the road looked worse than it did when we spread the stone. And because the water had nowhere to escape. So it was really good, honestly, for our crew, it was really good, but it was good. We use the example of other townships trying to explain to them, that's very important. This is how important drainage is. We didn't do it intentionally. We didn't even know it was going to rain, but that's how quick that a road can change when it just can't dry. We went out and removed the shoulder, at least prepped it as best we could in areas where we knew water needed to be. I think probably 2 or 3 weeks later, and then re-scraped the road. And now, like today, I drove 45 mile an hour on it when it was raining to get to Z Road. It's amazing the change. So what we'll do with some supplemental money that we have for the year from the local road program, we'll finish and put a little bit more limestone on, knowing that there's probably a bit of delay. I don't think anything's paving this year. I think reality, we know there won't be any paving or any change with the Trailwoods development there. So we'll work from approximately the Cedar Ridge area back to Z Road and just establish that as if we did a project there, and get our get our limestone lift up above that country curb, up above those shoulders, so it really has somewhere to kind of set the water for now. But yeah, unfortunate because it made us look bad because the water, you know, sits on the road, and it was obviously not intentional, but it was so evident how important drainage improvements prior to stone are. And so we made lemonade out of lemons, and we brought it back together, and we have great road surface out there now, and we'll be able to put a little bit of a cap on it with a few more inches of stone this year. And so we'll finish out the year good, but it's just drainage. I mean, it's probably the most important thing that we think about. So, and it's not cheap, it's expensive to kind of work through that too, because you have a lot of equipment needed to excavate, and then also a lot of equipment needed to transport that material and haul it off site. Because in Scio Township, we don't have a lot of areas that we can, like rural, that we can take it to somebody's house where they would use it. You know, we could dump the dirt because they could use it. It's basically soil, you know, so it's not contaminated, it's clean dirt. And the property owner could sign off on that, and then we could enter their property, dump the dirt, and then we go on, which in turn is efficiency, helps the township because you inevitably save money, so we save money. But in Scio, we usually bring most of it back here to our back lot here behind our building here on our property. We have probably 65 acres or so that just over the course of time, people have used dirt to fill other things. So now we just put the dirt back where we took it, you know, years ago. So it fits, but that's a little bit more transportation we have to do, and that's more miles on our trucks, it's more fuel. So, you know, our projects aren't as cheap as they could be, but that's okay. It's something we know about, we plan for, we estimate the projects. We make our way through it, but it'd be nice if we could kind of just leave the dirt at sites, you know, but that doesn't work in some areas. So a little bit of change with that, but I know I got a little long-winded on the drainage improvements, but it's so incredibly important. And when we get to a point, as the committee kind of asserts itself and you make the next steps and the next goals to, you know, how is funding going to be allocated, we'll spend more time together and talk specific about funding, and then also get to a point where we can go out for a little bit of road tours. We've been doing that with a lot of townships. We're hoping to do one with Ann Arbor's Roads Advisory Committee this fall even. York Township was very, very successful. They kind of we kind of teased and said, doing it like old school, like they used to. Many years ago, the county owned vans, and they would drive the township supervisors around with a foreman and usually a superintendent, and would drive around their roads every year as a roads tour, so they could decide what they're going to do on their program for the year. So obviously a lot has changed since then, but York Township kind of brought that back about 6 years ago, and they started renting like just basically like buses. And so with 5-6 township officials, myself as a superintendent at the time, and then the foreman would drive around with them. We show them the roads, and we kind of talk about, you know, I talk about country curb or drainage not, you know, around a tree causing potholes. And so we go out and see that stuff on their road system. And so that helps a lot when we come in the next spring or that winter and we start talking about what we're going to do for the following year. Then there's some like field experience, some understanding of, you know, it's tangible. You've been there, you've kind of felt, or you've seen the traffic volume, you've kind of gives you a little bit of understanding of what's going on. So that would be something that eventually we can get to as well, especially being so closely located to our main yard. You know, we can meet here, we can meet the township, and then we can, you know, we can drive around and show everybody certain things or like proposed projects or what we did the year before. There's just a lot of future in that. And it's very helpful when you're kind of at the roads 101 side of things. This group is very much established, which is a great thing, and has a really good history already. So we have a really good stepping stone to start with. You know, the road system in Scio is in good place and good order because of what we've all worked through over the past 10 years or so. So we're really excited to try to help keep that moving, and because it will change. You know, that's the only really constant in all this is some kind of evolution, a little bit of change. So the funding sources may change, the processes may change of selecting roads, and that's okay. Really, at the end of the day, our crew just needs to know, you know, what is the funding allocation? And then we build jobs to fit that. You know, we can do this much for X amount of dollars, and then we start there to keep things within reality, because some townships aren't as lucky as others, and they may not have the funding that they can allocate to a road program, and they may just not have the tax base. And so there's a lot that goes into that. So we don't want to offend, nor do we want to especially have a roads advisory committee, you know, have to exert energy for something that they may not even need to do or want to do. It's better to exert your energy, learn about what you can do, and kind of stay close to your goals that way. But that's really kind of the advisory committee's kind of prerogative. You know, you set your goals, and then you obviously have to have board support for it. And then we just keep moving forward, you know, one step at a time though.
Does the road commission travel Scio roads and tell, I know that there's a recommendation, but a lot of times the recommendation that comes from WCRC is the same as what the road advisory committee had.
Yeah.
So,
Most times most of the advisory committees usually match kind of where we're at, and really that's because of a lot of our effort, just trying to get to know everybody on the advisory committee, having open conversations like this, going on road tours. We kind of tested it with Dexter. We didn't really mean to. We just, a few years ago, Dexter decided they were getting everything set up. And then I believe the beginning of last summer, myself and Emily Kaiser, before she resigned from the road commission, we went and we presented similar like this to Dexter Township. And then this year, so they went off for their season. We didn't go back. We just kept in touch with them and gave them a projected, like where we think they should go over the next 8 to 10 years. Basically just helped them on an asset management plan, which I'll kind of use that keyword in here a few minutes later. So our foreman prepped what he thought where we needed to be, him and the superintendents, the early spring, basically late winter. And ironically enough, when they presented to us, they actually basically told us what they wanted to do. And it was the exact same line. And all we did was prioritize. So really, it's okay if the thought process starts to align, but it just starts with days like today where we're kind of making sure that relationship is there and starting to build things that really, you know, helps kind of start that process. But yes, so we do drive the roads. So we have 2 superintendents. Myself, obviously, I'm kind of strapped to the desk. I don't get out as much as I used to, but we have 2 superintendents that are out in the field. And then obviously we have an area foreman and a group leader. So the crew that's assigned to this area. So we'll kind of jump down through here and we'll get to jurisdictions real quick, and I can kind of show you guys on the map where our district.
And excuse me, we don't have video and we haven't, oh, bless you. Thank you very much.
Sorry about that.
Rob Patterson had his hand up and I was trying to.
Yeah, I saw that. I didn't know how to call that out.
Yeah,
would
sorry.
you,
Rob, do you
would
wanna-
it be okay if Rob has a question for you?
Yeah, and then we'll jump into jurisdiction real quick and I can kind of show you how we kind of see your roads and what crew kind of works on your roads. So yeah, if it's kind of short, I can go.
Or
I'm
was
just saying they've lost video. It's either.
Oh,
video-
maybe that was
okay,
that.
sorry.
You're either
Okay, that's
gonna
okay.
get, they're gonna get video or a screen presentation. I can't do both at once. So.
Okay, just so they know.
Having looked at myself in the mirror, I'd recommend the program is better. I can teach you more that way. Looking at me may not be as fun. Well, so if Rob does come back on, I'll try to answer as quickly as I can, or if not.
Sorry, I got the video back on.
Okay.
My fault. I don't know what's.
It's just one of those nights with
It's one of those
technology.
That's all right. Well, and this is a good time really to say it too. So if questions do come back around, Jillian, just get them to Joyce and she can kind of filter those over and shoot them over to us. We'll get as much information as we can. This is really just kind of face with the name and just really keep the conversation going and try to be here to help, you know, help the group. Just know that you've done great things in Scio. Don't question what you've done. You've done great things. And you'll work through everything you need to as process-wise, but your roads are in good order. We're getting there. And so we just have to keep it moving. But nonetheless, and speaking of keep it moving, so everybody's sake of your evening, we'll go down to the next slide, and then we're going to talk about jurisdictions. So we'll jump past that really quick. So this is just a little title header here, but then when you come down a little further, you'll see whose road is it. So probably not the easiest for everybody to see, but if you have the PDF up, everybody can see it, and then everybody virtual will be able to see it as well. So our District 1 crew that would see your road, so to speak, we're located out of this Z Road yard. So we come out of just over here behind our shoulders here. That crew is responsible for Webster, Scio, and Lodi Township. So that crew of 6 with 1 foreman and 2 graders, 2 motor graders, they're responsible for those 3 townships. So that's part of like your routine. So your routine scraping or your dust control that you see us perform in the summer, So you may see us, let's say you see us the first week of June, you may not see us until mid-July or first week of August or something, because then we some type of rotation, depending on weather, need, project load, whatever it may be, the crew will either go into Lodi Township or into Webster. This year, it seems to have panned out where they spent some time in Webster and then they come into Scio, then they go into Lodi, and then they go back to Webster, and just kind of a cycle. Because, you know, we obviously try to be equitable and service each township as much as we can. And so that's why our District 1, so to speak, came about, because Scio Township grew pretty quick, Webster Township is growing quickly, Lodi is surprisingly growing quickly behind it. Similar road surfaces, you know, most of the roads throughout those three townships now, most of them are limestone as opposed to natural gravel. So it's a little bit easier to maintain, a little more consistent for the crew to get used to maintaining a certain surface level. Where if you go into Freedom Township or even some of Lima Township roads where there are still some gravel roads that remain, and which is perfectly fine, just different traffic volumes. And so with the traffic loading that's in Scio Township, limestone, you know, is, well, even limestone, it's the traffic volume on some of the roads are even beyond the 500 cars a day estimated average for an unpaved road. But nonetheless, so those type of materials, those aggregate materials kind of help us kind of made that decision, you know, and this was years ago, long before me, but that's how things were kind of established. And we're lucky here, Scio is obviously the middle township and also the yard, so the facility's in the middle of the township. So we're in a pretty good place. We try to centrally locate ourselves as best we can throughout the county. We have a facility in Manchester, a facility in Chelsea, and then one off of North Territorial Road just east of US 23. It's one of our newer yards. We've just established that 2-3, well, actually it's been about 5 years now, but so that kind of handles our, what we refer to District 6, so that's like Ann Arbor, Northfield, Salem, Superior. So everything else is in 4s until you get down to the bottom of the county. Saline, York, and Augusta, it's another district with 3 townships in it. Now, unfortunately, that crew has to come off of Carpenter Road. That they share a large service center. Similar in size, it's not as big as our service center here, no office buildings, but they have a service center off of Michigan Avenue, just east of Carpenter Road. It's behind, you don't really know it's there. It actually is kind of blocked in by Morgan Road. And it actually sits behind there's a lumber yard there. So you really don't even know we're back there, which is fine. We like to be nice and quiet and back in our own place there. But nonetheless, the crew that comes out of that service center as well manages Pittsfield and Ypsilanti Township. And those townships are so developed and so close to a DPW style setting because they have a lot of pavement, they have a lot of subdivisions, very much different than most townships throughout. Where Scio Township obviously is developing quickly and very close second to that. But with that crew, we try to keep that crew very small. That's why it's only 2 townships. There's just so much routing to take care of in the wintertime. That's why we keep those a little bit more shrunk down. And that's actually a crew of 12 people that have to take care of that area. But nonetheless, so that's how we see Scio's roads, to kind of answer the question. Our foreman comes out of here. Our foreman actually lives on Scio Township as well. I myself am a Scio resident now. So we have pretty good concentration here. So there are a lot of people, and we have the better part of 50, 60 staff members kind of coming here every day and usually on some type of Scio road to get there. So we usually hear when things are gone awry quick enough, which is perfectly fine. I mean, more eyes are better. So it works out pretty good for us. But we have a pretty good connection to Scio Township roads. And like I say, just the continued work, these road surfaces are pretty good. Comparative to how they were 10, 15 years ago, from what I hear, it's been a great improvement. So, you know, each day, each project at a time, we continually make it better for the township residents. So, and we'll move on here a little bit to kind of keep everybody kind of
In
moving.
many ways, our roads are better than Ann Arbor.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I just drive a lot, and I know that when people complain here, I'm like, you need to go travel to some other, you know.
We're pretty lucky, and really that is just because there was established funding set, you know, years ago, and really just started the process. And this is a good time to make that note, since you kind of, you know, said that. We talked about it a few weeks ago when we were here, met that one afternoon. You know, that's the biggest thing we talk about with the roads advisory committees or townships, similar to like a York Township that has established quite the road program in recent years. Now, once you do that heavy lift and get things back to where you are or where is a good managing like level, then the projects become a little bit more manageable because you don't need 12 inches of stone. You can put 4 inches on a Scio road, or, you know, you do simple things like that, where they're a little less complex, not as long to finish, you know, and obviously in the long run, cheaper to do, and you can spread that stone further, basically. Kind of spread the, you know, the terminology, spread the peanut butter further, you really can, and you end up stretching the dollar. You don't save money, but you stretch the dollar that way, which in turn helps the taxpayers, the constituents in the actual township. So that's really the biggest thing, is just keeping it established. And that's where, unfortunately, some cities, villages, townships, you know, whatever the case may be, even large agencies such as ourselves, MDOT, where you've seen some roads slip away where they haven't just had that established asset management plan. And that's where we kind of keep touching on that, is that Scio's already got one moving, and now, you know, we have to keep moving it. And then you become really programmed to that asset management plan that we'll talk about in a second. You know, you put something down this year, you do a project this year, you should be at least revisiting it and knowing you have to set up some funding within the next 6 years so you can be done within the next 8 or 10, because you don't want to stretch it. You get to 15, 20, 30 years services on these roads and you just lose kind of all that stability, and you end up costing more in the long run. Not easy is, you know, easy to say it, but not always easy to accomplish it, because pavement, you know, paved roads, obviously, a little more expensive, and there's a little more planning involved in that. But with Scio having the DDA, there's a lot of opportunity here to help with that. You know, the DDA helped a lot this year on some of the crack sealing, you know, and they've partnered with us before on Jackson Road and hopefully in the future. And so that's really helpful for us in this township. It's another reason, another funding pot to help the roads in the township. And obviously complex, way beyond my understanding of how all that planning and everything works, but it's just exceptional to have those different funding pots where it's not all just township funds. Every dollar has to come out of one pot. You know, it's easily to kind of gain that and move that money a little bit that way. Makes it a little bit easier. So this is just what you would see on our website. So just kind of keep adding in ways to kind of work through our website. If you came to our website and went to doing business with the road commission, you'd see a township link once you click that drop down. And this would give you, you can look at all the townships maps if you'd like, but if Scio specific, you'd get this, what we refer to, these are our section maps. So they would break out a little further than that. They could go into sections where they actually cover like a township subdivision. So smaller subdivisions where you can, like, it blows the screen up basically, you can see it better. This is an overview of that. Kind of gives you some of your lane miles, so your unpaved and paved, primary, local. Really helps you just kind of assert yourself and see where you're at throughout the township if you'd like. Also, in that same doing business and under the township drop down there, you'll have these local road packets that we talk about. We have 2022 on there, we have 2023. So you kind of see how they've transitioned over the past few years. And so we usually keep the year previous and then the current year there, and that's public, that way everybody can see it. And so what that does is help with seeing actually what was going on, because historically, people wouldn't get this information unless they were at that meeting that day if we brought enough copies. You know, a lot has evolved in 10 years, just in the time I've been here. So now we have everything available. It's just like today, a quick PDF, we can email it out real quick if someone needs it or share a link. That's also really where you get your direct connection with our weekly roadwork schedule, where we note projects that we're doing. So essentially, if we have a Scio Township job, so a park road would have found its way on the roads work schedule because it would have had temporary road closures for the limestone hauling. They would have had notes if we were doing the drainage. So we do that just so people can have a quick link and grab a hold of that. And you can even subscribe to those. You can subscribe to just the township. And if you have questions or people ask about that, please send them our way. Our communications team is awesome at helping people kind of work through that, navigate that. I can help as well. If you just want me to share a few links, I can share those tomorrow to everybody. Really, whatever you guys need, we try to get as much information out as we can, because inevitably that helps us on the roadway, because we shedded some cross traffic that way. So we don't have people coming to the barricades as frequent, and it's less frustrating too, because then people may know, okay, on Tuesday of next week, I should probably plan to go a different route. Sometimes that limits some of the strain and stress.
Yeah, and that was one of the complaints from, I think, West Delhi is they didn't let us know, they didn't
Oh,
let us
yeah,
know.
yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, we were talking about communication and how can we, actually, I just wrote that question down, how can we, so if we, and I do receive the notifications, but getting our residents to do that as well.
Yeah, it's
to keep
hard to
track.
tie that sometimes, and you know, we're not allowed to put anything in the mailboxes, which would be great if we could just put something in their mail, but we're not allowed. And so a lot of times when we get out to do the work, you know, there may not be somebody home, and then we're, you know, our guys are kind of like, they don't know what to do, you know, they don't have, you know what I mean? Because you don't want to just kind of go rattle the door, so they're very cautious and try to be respectful, and so we try to help them as best we can, but yeah, I don't know if there's like township pages, if there's specific ways. I know in Ypsilanti, we make sure they have the weekly roadwork schedule as well. And then township officials also send it out through other means. If it's like a Facebook blurb for Ypsilanti. So I don't know, and forgive me for not knowing if Scio uses like Facebook or like Instagram or like Twitter or anything like that. I don't know kind of what level. We usually send that stuff out, but it's really just that weekly roadwork schedule because it's simplified and it's a live document. Excuse me, so really every Wednesday, midday. So today the superintendents were in the office, shut their doors, and I gotta do the schedule because they try to plan for the next week and try to get that updated, and then it gets released sometime tomorrow usually. That'll get released out, and then it becomes live on the website. So that's a little more helpful. When we have large scale projects, if we're gonna repave a subdivision or something, our contractors will give like the mailers, you know, and try to at least make some kind of contact. But short of, you know, like I say, when we're working kind of in a little more rural areas, it's a little more challenging for us to just kind of walk up and down. We get a little nervous trying to like knock on people's doors, kind of concerns us a bit. But we're open to any way we can make things better, even if we get some type of township flyer to the township, and then maybe the township can disseminate that out and kind of move that for us as like a little bit of a township mailer. That's kind of what we're working through a little bit with, we provide the township update, and I don't know if that comes all the way down to the roads committee yet or not. I'm not sure kind of how it goes. I know it goes to Will and Joyce, and I'm not sure where it gets sent from there, but we do kind of like a quarterly update, a local road program to the townships. And really, it's just, we were on this road, we did this project, and it's, you know, this many tons. It just really just kind of cool little bits of information and kind of update on what's coming, you know, in the next couple of months, which right now we're planning more for snow, unfortunately, but I hate saying that, but.
I'll ask
Good
Joyce.
question. Why couldn't we do something like this? Like West Delhi, most people enter off of Miller. Why couldn't there be a sign posted? Road work coming, so many dates, go to www. for details.
Oh, like a message board or something?
Well, it doesn't have to be an LED board, it could just be a signage.
Yeah, we do that on our larger scale projects, but I'll make a note in our communication teams, we can talk about that, because we do that, you've probably seen us do that on like a bigger project or a big closure. We put the digital boards out and try to like prompt the public meetings.
Bridge on East Delhi.
Yeah,
Refurb the bridge.
Yeah.
Sign up.
yeah, we haven't broke it down into the local road program though, but I'll make that note. Thank you.
We do have a quarterly newsletter that we can encourage residents in, I just wrote an article for our newsletter regarding the road, so.
Oh, good, yeah, and that might be, yeah.
Put it in there every,
Well, in,
newsletter and.
yeah, we could do that also, you know, because every spring we kind of established a program, and once the agreements start coming, you know, you could even make that blurb in, you know, if it comes out in, you know, March, April or something, depending on what actual month that you guys are releasing. You may be able to kind of get that note out there too, and then that'll start coinciding with some of the other stuff we might be able to do. Provide a little bit of update, like, you know, this year we're going to do, so this year would have said, we're gonna do Park Road, we're gonna add limestone to it, minor drainage improvements. And if you wanna go into further detail, you can, or you could just share the blurb, kind of like the title header on our agreement page that, you know, Park Road, Zeeb to Cedar Ridge, limestone, you know, really that's, the sky's the limit, kind of how far in depth you wanna go. But if you try to keep it kind of short, I would recommend just a little note and then refer them to our website or refer them to us for information, something like that.
And trying to, the road commission does, we have an article from the road commission as well, and I can't remember who wrote it though.
That's probably our communications team.
Okay.
And that's probably this quarterly kind of update, information bump we kind of send out there. I'll try to get a hold of it and see when it went out and where it goes, and I'll try to get that information to Joyce, and I'm sure it's probably buried in her email, but I'm sure she was probably going through so much, and right when she was here would have been probably the time we would have sent that, so it may have just went in the email as she was still just learning her job. So we'll kind of try to backtrack through that, because we have, our servers can kind of tell us when we send things and try to help with that, and we'll see. But yeah, so it's likely from our team prepped some of that, I would assume.
Yeah.
And it may just been, pulled right from it too.
Yeah, we really want to work on communication.
Well, yeah,
Just on
and
that.
consistency is really big as well, and that's why, our communications team is really good. They prep that, so if it does get shared, then it's simple on the township side. And we did that even recently over the big weather event we had, for an example. When Tyler Road had some washing around one of the structures, one of the dam structures there, and the road washed away in one portion. And so we had, many notes we were sending out really quickly. And actually, the County Emergency Operations Center used our advisory note, because it was just one line of communication, came from one source, and then just got sent to everybody that way. That way, there's no room for perception to sometimes affect the reality.
Oh, great, thank you.
You're welcome, thank you, Bob. That was actually a good point, thank you. And then, so we'll go to the next slide here, and really this is just kind of what we've been talking about, but just some examples. So primary roads, most of the time paved. We do have about 80 that are unpaved. Unfortunately, it's like 1 mile every couple years, so I have a feeling that it's gonna be a little while before we get all those paved, so bear with us, we have some primary unpaved roads. But anyways, nonetheless, so almost 600 miles. That primary road system is gonna take you places. It's gonna take you and connect the communities. So sometimes you'll hear us refer to as connector roads. And then also you'll see that in some of our funding pages as we talk later on, different timing for that. But they'll be referred to as connectors. And so that's some of the key verbiage you'll get used to hearing with us. So an example would be Jackson Road, which is pretty simple here. Your zebra roads, we're really moving a lot of traffic. We're going places if we're on that road. Dexter Ann Arbor, Dexter Road, so they did things pretty simply back when they established this area and the road system in this community. They usually gave you like where you're going, where you came from, and then as you get close to somewhere, okay, now it's just Dexter Road, so I must be almost to Ann Arbor. It's really kind of funky how it works, but it was really good for somebody like me coming from Ohio and never even been in this county in 2015, and I actually knew where I was going in a short order, which was interesting. Now, granted, maybe a little bit of road training helped me with that, but so they kept things pretty simple, but you're connecting those communities, you're moving, you're going somewhere. And then the next slide, we'll talk about our local road system, where they really connect the people. So us Scio residents that live here in the township, that's taking us to our houses. So that's getting me home when I come off of that primary road. So that's gonna connect, obviously people to homes, and that does include your subdivisions as well. So that's gonna get those people moving around inside their actual little complex they have there, their subdivision. That's gonna move them in there. As you can see, we have 1,000 miles in the county and a considerable amount of them unpaved. So that's where the local road program becomes such an important thing to us, and why it's so valuable that we do about as much as we can to try to partner as much with all 20 townships, because it keeps our highway system moving. And we are grateful for it. This year's been very successful. When it's all said and done, we should be somewhere around $10 million worth of work that's getting done on the local road system. And now granted, there's a considerable amount of that money going to paved roads, paved local roads. But some of the townships with more paved roads, like an Ypsilanti Township or a Pittsfield Township, they devote more time to that and more funding to that, just because they have more unpaved roads. But a little different structure than what Scio has, but nonetheless, the local road system as a whole, whether it's paved or unpaved, is so important to us, because we have the township partnerships. That's why we work really hard to make sure we have those good relationships, and we educate as much as we can, because the townships in turn are the ones advocating for us. And that's where it becomes really important to make sure that the people that are advocating for us are educated and understand, our processes. And then we'll jump into the next slide, which is where we kind of just tease everybody and get a little, a little bit of comedy in there. What have we done for you lately? And really all that means is really opening up the conversation to the asset management plan. So I'll save you, and we'll go to the next slide, and I'll save you all the heartache of the definition. But this definition is actually from the Act 51, so PA 51, so actually like the road funding, statute. So that's a really long-winded way of describing things, but really that's at managing your asset. Your assets are your local roads, at least the asset that we're interested in coming and helping with, the local road system. So that's maintaining and preserving and then upgrading. Well, all that is easy to say. That's where the hard part comes in. That's where Scio has kind of skipped through the first part of the sentence because you already have an established program maintaining your road system. You have a roads advisory committee that's paying attention to what you do and at least being educated in roads. It takes a little weight off your supervisors and managers because they don't have to be road experts as well. All of you can educate them and advocate, okay, for the township constituents, we should do this road maybe, or at least what kind of funding can we get to do this road? And that's where like that really helps the program. Then you get in the second part of the very long sentence here, where cost effective. Well, the cost effectiveness comes from managing the asset where you have this 10-year stood up program, and now we're doing those smaller limestone lifts or caps, as I referred to, where you're using 4 or 6 inches to maintain a road as opposed to a foot of limestone, which is incredibly expensive. And then obviously continuous effort, that is clearly understood by everybody. That's where you keep it established and you keep it moving forward. And that's the most important part of that is regardless who sits on committee, board seats, whoever's faces or wherever, you keep it going and you establish this understanding that it's a necessity. This committee always has goals. The township's goal is to maintain the road system or fund this set amount of dollars a year. It's really just establishing that and then slowly just keeping it moving forward. Because you don't have to take the whole bite of the apple all at once. You just small bites of the apple, just consistently doing it, and you will get through the system. And that's been proof over the last 10 years. The first year I was here, I can remember being on Bandera Court down there and Shevchenko and down in there and just looking at like all these roads. I'm like, how in the world are we ever gonna get these done? But now 10 years later, we're actually searching to, okay, we should go here because the drainage is worse, so let's add more stone before we spend a bunch of money drainage because we may be able to lift the road above the drainage need. Save some money. Well, right, yeah, don't be wrong, I got my favorites too. Yeah, so you have that, now you have a quick way you can just pick, you're not looking at every road in every constituent saying, this is terrible, I can't drive on this, and it helps you kind of make better decisions that way, or at least have a little more educated decision, as opposed to just grasping at straws.
So we could, as a committee, create like a pacer, because we're getting ready for a new type of funding, or
There's a discussion for it probably, yeah.
yeah, for next year, but we could create kind of a pacer program, or do you already have a pacer program?
Yeah, so we
for
have-
Scio?
Yeah, well, for the paved roads, we don't do ratings, we don't rate the unpaved roads. And the reason why we didn't do it, when we've looked at it before, it's very hard to even get the full grade width to get full ditch, where they really want you to like give it true rating. So what we do is our local road program where we kind of rate it with, whether it be the manager, the supervisor, or the local roads committee. We prioritize where we think we should go. And so that's why we refer back so much to an asset management plan where we use chronological data, which is simple that, okay, in 2014, we worked on Liberty Road. 2022, we should have done something on Liberty Road kind of thing. We're a little more simplified, that's like an 8-year window there. But yes, you could assert yourself and set a bit of a condition rating. Linden Township is kind of throwing it around. They're trying to establish kind of their goals and procedures, how they're going to do that, but they'd like to rate in some fashion their unpaved road systems. Because some communities do that, but we just haven't, because it doesn't usually bode well for condition, because then you have to pick, do we do it in the winter, do we do it in the fall, do we do it in the spring? And our roads change so much because they're kind of natural. As opposed to a paved road, you could rate almost any time of the year as long as it's not snow covered. But if you try to rate a park road in February, you may rate it higher because you might not be able to see what happens when it's saturated. And if you rate it in July, you may rate it differently than you would in February. And I'm not saying that to deter you, I just, with asset management and having some chronological data already, you could start there and then maybe set priority and prioritize where you wanna go, and that'll kind of make that map, and that'll inevitably give you some kind of condition. Like, is it really bad? We focus on one really bad one every year. We focus on maybe a good road every year, and then we focus on one that we're just, just doing some maintenance on. Yes?
Is there a township that we should look at that's doing a good job of having?
I really, well, I mean, in all honesty, this township has done really good, honestly. I mean, I'm not saying that because I'm in front of you, like, we use you as an example. We've used you as an example in this room with the township supervisors. That was the reason that started Dexter, then Dexter led to Ann Arbor, and then Ann Arbor and Dexter and Scio were in the room, and that motivated Linden. And then Sylvan is kind of looking to fall after Linden. I mean, you really do have a good starting process or starting of this. You're a couple steps ahead of everybody. But I like how Dexter uses data. They use a lot of data and spreadsheets. And it's matching what we usually prioritize and recommend. So that was the one I kind of referred to earlier. That was a pretty good match and kind of comical. We even laughed about it again this morning because the foreman's like, did you talk to them before we did this? And I said, no, we just let this work its way out. And our priorities matched their spreadsheet and their data, which is good because that was a good challenge for us to see, okay, do we feel like we're doing this right? And so we hit those marks. So I like Dexter's data, and they use crash data. They use quite elaborative data. They'll use traffic counts. And we do have traffic counts. We have some of this data that we can help, or we can just give you guys. So you don't have to go out and like recount these things. Linden is actually going to count some of the roads that they haven't had information on in a while, but that's more focused to the unpaved roads, where I promise the good majority of Scio's unpaved road system is getting a lot of traffic. Most of the roads are getting heavy use. So that's something you can kind of make your decision if you want to spend energy on that or not. But so you kind of pair that with the chronological data that you have because you have good agreements and established where you've been, where most townships, they have it, but the only way they have it is us just giving them old agreements. They haven't had such a robust program coming into this. Most of them are trying to get the program kind of to this status. So that's what leads me back to kind of continually say, like, you're further ahead than you probably know, or you probably feel that you are. And that's why really, if anything I can help with today is just, you've done good things. You really have, whether it be people before you, your group now, good things have happened. And we're going a good direction. Our road system is good in this township. So do yourself a favor, don't overthink things. But yeah, a Dexter would be first to reach out to. Ann Arbor they're going to use GIS data. So they're going to use a mapping system similar to what we use to map our culverts. So that's geospatial information. Basically, it's just an internal geographic map where you may have like a dot on the map that says, okay, this culvert's 24 inches wide or in diameter, and it was replaced in 1942. Just digitalizing basically a logbook.
When you said Ann Arbor, do you mean the township?
Yes, I'm sorry,
Okay.
I apologize, I'm sorry.
Because I think, the city does their own.
The city has that GIS, they have the same similar system, yes, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to
Okay,
confuse
just,
you.
yep.
Yeah, sorry. I'm always used to talking township, so I apologize for not being specific.
Well, we'll know from now on.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I'm sorry if I kind of get going fast. As you can tell, I get a little excited about this stuff, so it's motivating to me. But yeah, so you could talk a little bit with Ann Arbor and really just see how they're starting their program. Because, like I say, a lot of these, are mirroring after what you guys have done. So yeah, there's a little feather in the cap I would keep there for the work you've done. And so you have a good start. My professional recommendation would be use chronological data because that's easy to establish. You have good agreements that say when you were there, how much we spent, which really is irrelevant now, 8-10 years later, but at least you know how much you had to do. And so quantities of stone, that type of thing. So you really knew how much you had to go through to get to this point. And then now you're getting to a point where you're probably needing half that stone to do that because now you already have a good base underneath you. And then from there, I can help with an actual asset management plan. So really, it's super simple spreadsheet, and then we just start filling that data in and really just let it prompt us, and we just follow the boxes. Did it this year, check mark, and then 8 or so years from now, we need to be looking at it again. And so really, that's kind of simple, and it's not too complex. So if you have new members coming in and off the committee, it's easier to grasp and keep moving forward.
That's what I would like to, for us to build, is just
Simplify
so
the
we can
spec.
pass it off to the
Yeah.
next and they don't have to reinvent the wheel.
But yeah, so the GIS systems are good to use, and the township has that already. And so there's some tools that you can use where we have data where we can just dump to you. And really what those GIS systems do is they just build the map. So you'll see in the local road program, basically mapping. Well, we build it off our GIS system. We put limestone from here to here this year, you know, and so we'll have a little blue line on the map. And then in 2023 will be a red line, you know, whatever color it may be. So you just build that map, and then that's another way to connect those dots that you would see behind the curtain on that spreadsheet saying project was in 2022 and 2023. So yeah, it's actually much simpler than you'd expect once you get into it. But you have good data
It
already.
sounds like we could take some of the, start with that, which we've got.
Yeah, you have, and that's good firm information too. That's very clear information that you've
And then add
had.
some of this other, like the
Mhm.
GIS information, to kind of fine tune it as we have to make judgments about priorities.
Correct. That's where having that information, then you can truly become analytical and really look into the data, analyze what you're doing, and make good recommendations to the board. Because most times, we'll have some bit of communication during the planning process. So whatever you're probably proposing to the board, or at least proposing for funding wise, probably lines up with where we want to go anyways. And then all we do is just prioritize, okay, let's do this one this year, and we know we have to come to this road next year. And so really just start setting it. And then you get to the point where we can visit in the fall, be prepared, and you can go between now and budgeting time with the board and seeking your funding. And then as soon as January 1 hits, in theory, we can have, you know, agreements prepped. And the reasoning for that helps with forest-related work, because there are seasonal limitations to trimming, you know, certain trees, oak trees, for example, you know, doing certain work. If we ever had large drainage work, you'll see that. There's seasonal limitations, so the sooner we can get them, the better we are as well. We can provide a little bit better service that way. We're more efficient when we have time to kind of plan for it.
Just, I'm writing down some things
No,
that
you're good.
saying.
And other questions, please keep asking, or ask me in another couple days, I'll help you too.
So we need to get our list to you by, was it May? Do you remember?
Oh, for the local road program? Yeah, so most years, it's by the end of May, beginning of June. Usually just think yourself middle of May. You should be really together and prep. Now, ideally, with as far along as Scio is and your group is, you know, our goal is to get it to where we're talking in the winter and prepping, because then once the budget's set for the year, then we're ready to go. So earlier the better, honestly. I mean, if I can get the thing in December and then we can start working it through, that's even better. But that's a push. We still got to get used to doing that way, but
Well, and our budget is due
probably end of January maybe?
March 31st.
Oh, okay, that's when you guys, but okay. Yeah, so, and that's okay too, because you can work the beginning part of the year during the auditing process and just make your proposal for funding. And then by the time the board works through their process, you know, we'll be ready. But no, sooner the better. I mean, one day earlier every year is better. And we were successful this year getting things earlier, and that's been Cheryl Siddall's push we're trying to build the program in and improve it. Matt McDonnell will carry that on as well. And then obviously myself, having been a superintendent, had to estimate for 20 townships, you know, all at once and build all these programs for 20 different, you know, so it's not just one at a time, it's hard. So for the sake of somebody that used to be a supervisor out in the field and a superintendent, earlier the better, because we can plan better and we can make adjustments then, and just, we end up providing a better service. And then the second part of the year, we have opportunities just like this year where we can do more work on Park Road and enter into other agreements. We have some townships, York Township, for example, they're into their third agreement already. And so, yeah, So we re-engage and say we have savings, so we re-engage and we actually can take on another project.
Oh, right, okay.
So then you're paying this year's monies or costs to do something you may have had structured and set up for next year.
And it would probably be cheaper
I
this year.
guarantee it'll be cheap.
Yeah,
Yeah, we have
okay.
never seen cost savings, unfortunately. Everything just keeps incrementally increasing, so.
This is, yeah, I like this.
But we can help with this. We can help with this stuff, and that doesn't have to be set today or anything. These are all continuing conversations, but yeah, with the data you have, establish yourself that you've already got a pretty good, we'll call it spreadsheet set up, asset management plan set, and then start adding some more of the data that you can analyze. Because there will be time you're gonna have to prioritize and then propose to the board, because inevitably the board has to support you and say, okay, we wanna fund it whichever direction, is it a millage, is it a, whatever it is, the board has to support that. Inevitably, they have to explain that as well. And that's the same process we go through every year. We propose a local road program to our board of commissioners, and then they support us in December. Usually November, December, we start talking. Same thing with budgeting, just here in August, I proposed the equipment budget for next year. And so it happens at all of our levels. And so the more firm understanding we have where a township wants to go, that may also help us in the long run. I may need to get a new grader for us because we may do extra work in Scio or something. There's things that help us too, kind of behind the curtain, so.
I have a question
Yeah.
raised,
Oh, yeah.
from Pam Boyd.
Hmm.
So, Pam, if you wanna.
Thank you. Adam, thank you very much for using the picture of the Zeeb Liberty Roundabout. It is a beautiful work of art.
Thank you.
That brought up a question that I heard a rumor that at some point there's going to be a roundabout put over by the A&W, which is, I believe, a combination of 3 different municipalities.
Okay.
And I'm wondering if there's an update on that. I'm just seeing the traffic jams that will affect Scio Township with that.
Mhm. Yeah, so sorry, go ahead. Keep going.
Oh, no, go ahead. That's my question. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. I don't have an update for that, but I will see what part of the planning process they are. I know they were talking about it a few meetings ago, but I didn't really retain any of the data because it's or information, it was kind of beyond me. I can get that, and do you have an email you could share maybe in the chat or something that I could?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah, one of us can connect.
okay, so I can get some information. That's a good question, and yeah, I believe that's where they're trying to reach some type of design on some type of interchange in there and a roundabout, I think, in that area, which obviously there are quite a few entities involved there. That would be complex. It could be really cool if it all comes to fruition. I think it'll be a really cool way to process some traffic through there, because it does back up. I used to live in Pinckney before we moved to Scio, and
Have another raised hand as well.
Yeah.
I will cut them off at some point.
Appreciate it. Okay,
Go
thank
on,
you.
Rob Patterson.
You were talking earlier about the really bad roads that might need a 12-inch lift. And in Scio Township, Park Road has been that really bad road. And the way I understand it is they have a 8-inch lift schedule. Is there any chance that will turn into a 12-inch lift depending on how it goes for the next layer?
Yeah, so specific, if you can, give me a little feedback. Are you just kind of in general, or you have a specific, is it like east, west of Zeeb? Because we have performed some in that area. If you maybe enlighten me just a touch more.
I'm talking about west of Zeeb Road to.
Okay. So Cedar Ridge, maybe the subdivision? or
Cedar
state?
Ridge. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so they put anywhere between 4 and 6 inches went out there earlier this year, and then we'll probably put another 4 or so inches on top of that. Right now, with all the reviews going on in the area there, we don't want to put considerable amounts of stone on there because it may inevitably reach some type of development. And then at that point, that would make construction challenging because they would have to strip all that limestone. And so we'd kind of be double spending money. So that's why, Rob, we've kind of balanced that this year and just tried to put a little bit, then we'll try to put a little bit more. We just really don't want to spend valuable dollars if it may inevitably be affected through some type of development. We don't feel it's the best way to spend the township's money and spend our money, because I just would hate to see the material get lost. in the long run, but nonetheless, we are gonna put more back there. So by the time the year is over, and you may not have noticed it, but there'll probably be about 10 inches or so on there. And we'll get ourselves up above kind of where the grass is and where it traps the water. So we'll be in good order. You know, you'll get another 6-8 years out of that, even with the high volume of traffic on Park Road. It'll be sustained for a good time there, Rob. It may not be the perfect, yes, 12-inch lift that we'd like to do, a full comprehensive project, but I don't think it's the best to do right now, just because I have a feeling we could expose people to spending, or expose entities to spending money that may not be needed to be spent right now.
Perfect, thanks for your time.
I can't raise my hand, but I'd like to.
Well, go ahead, Jonathan.
Go on.
I do apologize for, I just don't seem to have the button. If that's okay, I just have another follow-up question around Park Road. And thank you for the information so far, and I apologize if I asked a duplicative question. I arrived late.
You're okay.
But when you say it's not a valuable use of the township's money to put a proper crown and drainage and other things in on Park Road, there was funds set aside for this 10 years ago, and they were never spent. And that's what's being used now to bring it up to a standard that was required under the SAD. Now, that happened after the 10 years had expired. It was ignored. And it was actually ignored for more like 25 years with nothing but slight amounts of gravel being added. So when you tell a community that it's not a priority to spend money on a gravel road that has been terrible, and not only terrible, but ignored, despite the fact that we paid significant amounts of money to have the roads maintained in our taxes. For that to happen, and then for you to get up here and say that it's not a good use of our money to fix Park Road because we may have to strip off some additional gravel down the road, is a little bit disheartening to the hundreds of residents that have used it and that use it and that continue to have to use it in its poor condition. Thank you.
You're welcome. Would you like me to?
You know what,
Okay.
let's just keep going with the
Okay.
presentation. That to me is public comment. Jonathan has lived on Park Road for 30+ years, so he's got a lot of experience, so respect his comment, but you know.
Yeah, I as well.
Let's stick to the presentation.
Okay, well, thank you. So also kind of still moving, we'll go to the next slide, is really just asset management again, which we've kind of all talked about. So the slide here, due to funding challenges, well, Scio's in a little different place. You have a little bit of established program. So some of these slides, you know, we're really like starting people from the ground up. That's why I say we're a couple steps ahead. Yes, funding is still a challenge because it's funding. It's expensive, it's not free. We're valuable partners, and it means the world to us because we wouldn't be able to do the work. Even we can't, statutory rule, you know, we can't do large scale project without a partner. So we're incredibly thankful for the townships. But some townships, like we've kind of talked before, may not be as lucky as us in Scio. So we have a little better established program. So really what that is, it's just strategy with limited funds, because inevitably you can't just spend everything. So you have to be strategic, and that's where this information and really being analytical, where we can really prioritize where you guys need to, or at least where your recommendations are to your board, or whatever kind of freedom or control, however they want you to manage the program, however that is decided by the board. You know, that really sets you up for being strategic. So you have a lot of information to start with. So some of these slides, once again, it's kind of, this one is still, I left it in here really to be that feather in the cap again, is that you're getting there. We're there. We're doing good work. We just have to keep making sure we get allocation from the board for funding, which I believe with even some of the agenda topics, and I'll try to be quiet and get out of here so you can finish those. You're already on the track for good conversation from just a couple agenda links I looked at just for today. You're having those conversations. You're literally years ahead than some established groups. So just keep having the conversations, and then you can make good decisions how you want to recommend things to the board. So yeah, strategy is incredibly important. You have a good strategy right now. We are successful. Your roads are showing signs of improvement. We're in an okay place. But yeah, so I'll kind of jump to the next screen, then I promise I won't take too much more of your time. So really, how are you gonna maintain and improve? That's where I kind of make the note of goal setting. Really, what establish those goals? How do you want to establish your fund, and how is it gonna be allocated every year? What type of funds are gonna be allocated? And then how much, you know, and then your timeline. So timeline, you don't have to be too concerned about that in my recommendation professionally to you all, just simply because you already have something established. So I would just try to stay in that 8-year and 10-year max window if you can. So 6 years from a job happening this year, I would really start the conversation, start knowing that 6 years from now, you have to start looking for funding to allocate to a specific road to maintain it. And that gives you 2 years to plan. And then by that 8th year, you're putting some stone on the road, you're making small drainage improvements. That fits into that 8 to 10-year window where you're doing something so you don't fall too far behind where you get into these large-scale jobs. That also, once again, stretches that money out a little bit, so that's more of that strategy coming into play there, where you can really do a few roads that only need a little bit of work per year, and then one large-scale job. You know, you could really balance it if you had to that way. And then obviously the end goal. The end goal is sitting there for groups that are establishing themselves right now. But you still need to have an end goal in Scio as well. You know, are all the roads gonna be perfect? Or are we just gonna maintain what we have now, which is a good, you know, safe service, you know, serviceable system where the roads aren't falling off the side of the road, basically falling off the side of the earth. So really have that goal, but that's probably gonna be something that you'll establish your goals, your timelines internally, and then probably there'll be like, whether it be working session or some type of session with the board to see where the flavor is, like what is our true end goal? Are we getting to a point where everything it gets paved, you know, whatever, the sky's the limit, but you have to set those goals. That helps your established boundaries for whoever sits on the committee or the board later on. So it's really just establishing something. So I kind of keep saying the same thing over and over throughout different slides and different ways of coming about it, but it's really just where do you want to end with it? But your timeline is already moving, so you're not starting from scratch. So that makes that third bullet there a little bit easier to kind of work through. Not as scary as some groups coming to if, you know, looking at it at 0. But 10 years ago, you know, everybody was at 0 because no one had roads committees, and Scio was the first one to try to really push that, and so that's where it started coming about. Yeah, so that started, I believe, here. Now, it was a little bit before my time, but those plannings and those sessions kind of started, and that's really what pushed Scio Township. But now I don't have the actual history of any of that. It was a little before my time, but when I started here 10 years ago, it was established. And like I say, we kind of were on Marshall that year, and Shevchenko and Bandera kind of working through there. So I've seen it after the planning process, so I haven't really, I don't know, it wasn't in the room when it started, but nonetheless, we've moved forward. We've done good work, and just, it's one project at a time. And then I'll jump in here. We'll keep moving, kind of scroll into improving local roads. I'll go very quick through this because you can continually scroll it down here, Ian. Thank you. We already know that we're partnering. The Act 51, I kind of noted on that. It's really just maintaining those good partnerships. That's where we really benefit from this. And I mean, we're incredibly thankful for that. We're appreciative. It's literally one project at a time. And then we'll scroll into the matching program. So this is where we start the year. These could change, these could improve. You know, we always are hopeful that things improve. We get more funding. That is the goal, you know, to start being able to, you know, build the program further. But in 2023, the local road matching program is $1.5 million. So that's disseminated amongst the groups. And so everybody kind of gets their share. And Scio getting a little more than some because bigger, you know, more, I forget the percentage. I apologize for the percentage. I don't have that on top of my head. But so townships, that's divvied up amongst, I believe it's off of the consensus or the census data. I believe that's how it starts. And I can get more information. I took the slide out because I didn't want to take too much of your time, and I apologize. I don't have that committed to memory yet, but I can kind of get some more information, but nonetheless, it's divvied amongst all 20 townships,
So
so.
it's around $100,000 for Scio?
Yes, yeah, I
Okay,
believe
so
it's
it's not really a
99
match,
something.
but it's a.
No, that's just what we can, of the $1.5 million that we can provide out of our
Okay.
general fund, our MTF, our Michigan Transportation Fund,
Okay.
to the local road system. And really, that's just something that we establish what we can afford to budget, knowing that we have all our other primary maintenance, our snow, winter maintenance,
Yes, right.
all of that. Kind of all, it all wraps into something, but nonetheless, we love the local program to be more. Right now, that's as high as we've got it. But thankfully with the townships, we've still been able to do quite a bit of work, even just with the matching program. But many townships such as Scio as well, they overmatch, and so we do even more work. So that's where we become incredibly thankful, because it's people like doubling up on us and helping us. So it's very much appreciated. And so that simplified, for the roads 101 portion, the township board really decides that allocation. But with a roads committee, you would make recommendation, gain support, and then we take it from there. So a little bit different than some of the townships that don't have that established yet. And then the local program, we can continue on. This is the packet that I talked about. Pretty simplified, gives some options for some funding, which you're all probably more familiar with than some townships that you've kind of worked through. But there are options, and then we'll go to the next slide, and there's a couple more. This is kind of a play on our bucket funding that actually came from Scio Township years ago, how we described that to everybody. But so across the road, or across the county, you can get varied ways of funding. And you see it there. You have SADs, you have bonds, township-wide SADs, millages, and then the township general fund. So it really, all 20 townships kind of do it any which way fits for them, and that's good. That's kind of coming back to what fits for the township is what, allows them to be successful. So it's really what the township can endure and can encumber cost-wise. And then really just kind of gets to the questions, but I kind of answered a few of them. I know I went way longer, and I apologize for your guys' time, but please think it over, ask questions. We're here. We come back and talk about funding. We can come back and help through the process. When you have questions, get them to Joyce and have her send them over. That way she stays plugged in what we're working on. And then we can, if it's to prep in roads or scheduling like a roads tour, or if you wanted to go see one specific project to kind of learn about a type of project, we have a lot of work going on. Even if we have to go out of the township a little bit to see it, we're more than welcome to try to help. But just know, one project at a time, we get things done. So don't overthink it. It's simplified if you keep it simple.
Yeah, I think we would like to have you back for the funding part of it.
Yeah, and I'll bring
because
others
there's-
with me as well, because they're so much better at it. I mean, I'm very simplified. We're maintenance side of things, so we're very
Yeah.
practical and out in the field. But Matt McDonnell, Cheryl Siddall, Brent Schlack, Aaron Burkholz, all of our engineering staff, our leaders in the engineering staff, they're all very, very skilled in talking about specific types of funding. And they kind of have their own silos where they're really good. We have Aaron that's really good at SAD work. Brent Schlack is really good at like safety-based grant program stuff, which really isn't quite relevant to the township specific, but he still, nonetheless, it's knowledge base that he can really help with, walk through that. And all these members have been part of our organization for 20 years or more. Whereas I'm new into the organization, new into the Michigan structure, where I come from the Ohio structure, a little bit different. But nonetheless, probably myself, Cheryl, Matt, and probably Brent or Aaron, we'd come back and help through the funding when you guys are ready. But I'd recommend probably before that, make a little bit of a mock asset management plan. If you want me to send you like a demo one so you can see, I might even have a Scio demo one. I know I might have used Scio as a demo for Webster Township this spring. But nonetheless, we'll send you kind of a demo one that you can kind of track. It's very simple, easy to follow. Kind of get that established. And then when you get to the point where you're ready to learn about the funding a little bit more prior to maybe recommending to the board or proposing to the board, I would say somewhere in there, so maybe early November, December, whatever timeline fits for you all. I don't know how often you're kind of meeting, but.
We meet once a month.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, and we have a lot on our plate right now, and we may need to schedule some work sessions.
That's okay. Yeah, anytime we can come try to help. And also, when you get to, like, if you want to really highlight a certain type of funding or how does something come about, please get it to Joyce and shoot us an email, or she can keep you attached to it. And then we can get all the information right back to where you can even have literature just to read on, to try to help you since you guys are busy. But, so my information's there, and if you don't all have it, it's there, and also tonight would have given you guys direct access to my email when I sent that, so it's got my title on it too, you're able to get, my phone, which calls right to the desk, and please reach out if you need something, but really specific stuff to township, go through Joyce, just because that keeps Joyce plugged in, and that also helps fast track her and get her some awareness of the roads quickly, because she's probably has a million things that she's working on, so.
Yes, yeah. I do see her on all the, if I email you, or, because I know she's so busy, to
Yeah.
to ask her to do it, but yeah.
And it just keeps clean communication that way, it makes it easier for everybody.
Do you have any questions, anybody?
Really fabulous presentation, thank you.
Well, thank you. I wish I really would have liked to break it down a little bit more and talk, but for the sake of your time, and I apologize for going long. But we get excited about this stuff. We like it, and we're in a really good place in Scio. We're going the right way. Just know that we're going the right way.
It's fascinating, actually, the more that we, but I do have a couple of questions. There was some, is there a list of limestone roads with more than 500 cars per day? Maybe, I was thinking that maybe.
Oh, yeah, like the average daily traffic. So I can get you guys, I don't know what our most recent counts would be. We call them counts, refer to them as counts, where we put those little tubes across the road. I don't know our most recent count data, but I'll talk to them tomorrow, get you some data. And then depending on how the fall is, if it's something that, if it's only one road we're missing or something, we may be able to get them counted this fall.
Yeah, just.
That'll be helpful for some of the data you need.
Yes, yes. And also, we have an environmental sustainability task force, and the parks and pathways, and we have a lot of things that are going on, but the environmental part of it, I know that in some of these committees, they're trying to, I know one is lower the speed limit on more of the rural roads, which I believe are at 55. And from our meeting with, that was the Trailwoods, or the Stabler Park Road, and Matt
Matt was
McDonald.
probably here, yeah.
Yeah, he was saying that it's really hard, and it goes through.
It's so far removed from us, it's challenging, but like for us, we're okay with it too sometimes, because it's not something we have to work on, but yeah, it's, I think, state level, and you're looking, you're looking at an uphill, progress or process to even just get in front of somebody to talk about it, and it doesn't, we don't see it normally change, but it's still, we can get you the information and why it doesn't normally change, or where you would go about, proposing this or making requests. At least then you have that information, and you can release that to the groups, the sustainability group, and explain to them that, it is challenging, here's what we can do, but, inevitably knowing that it may not change like tomorrow,
Yeah, and I think there's the state police, there has to be traffic studies, and there's a lot of
There's
things.
considerable studying that has to go in multiple sources.
There are some bills that some representatives are trying to get passed where it would be more of a local level decision, but that's in the process, so we'll just have to keep an eye on that.
Yeah, that's kind of a not tomorrow sort of thing, but, yeah, so we can still, I made a little note here, and we'll have, that would come from probably Brent Schlack. He oversees traffic and safety department right now, so he can help with that.
And is there a way to narrow the roads, like the bike paths in Ann Arbor, how they have more, like they took the road, and like half of the road is a bike path now?
Oh, yeah, kind of road diet.
And, I guess slow down traffic. I mean, Jeff Human has been asking a lot of these questions, but
They don't
so
normally-
maybe butchering them.
Yeah, they don't normally do that like on a county road, like a county primary road, because we don't really have like the established road built and like road width where we could shrink it down and still have space to get all the traffic through it. Because some of it looks to be, and maybe Matt Parks would be the best to probably get the explanation from. Just because he's, excuse me, part of kind of the planning side of it. But some of the Ann Arbor roads, they've shrunk them so much that they've either reduced the lane of traffic or changed direction of travel, which, you couldn't do on let's say a primary Z road. So what you see a lot of times we paint them as narrow as we can to give that cycling space or the non-motorized space. But most of our non-motorized comes from actual non-motorized path building a non-motorized program itself where they would establish those. And a lot of that is, the county millage from Parks and Recreation, so there's a lot of partners involved in that. Because we don't typically just, build non-motorized, but I can get you some more information on that. But yeah, Matt Parks would probably be first, very much up to date on it because he's still planning with a lot of communities and plans with Scio as well. Because I think at some point there is some bit of like capital planning about non-motorized, I believe, or at least some extent. Because I know the township's kind of taken on some non-motorized here in the past few years, I believe, or at least the projects, so to speak.
Yeah.
So he may have some good information on that, just being side of your planning side here and a representative consultant for you guys.
Okay.
But I can still get, some response from our agency as well.
Good, good. And one other thing, I was going through some old, we're going through the neighborhood SADs that have been like 10 years or whatever, and we're making sure that if there's any surplus funds that goes back and just closing them out. So one of them I came across was the Glades, and it looked like WCRC had done the work for the Glades, but they're a private neighborhood. So and I didn't think, when I talked to people, I think it was Jim Harmon in the past, he said, we don't do private roads. He couldn't even tell us where our private roads were because, and then I thought, well, how come they did the Glades? So does
No, I don't know. I myself don't know of any private segments that we would, have partnered with.
Okay, because we're,
But do you have an approximate, and I'll ask, someone will have history over there,
10 years.
approximate years.
Well, it's gotta be 10 years.
14-ish, 13-ish, somewhere in there maybe.
Yeah,
That I'll have to report back with that. I'm not.
yeah, I was surprised because then we have, we have a lot of private neighborhoods that would need road work, and then if we had a special assessment for them, would WCRC do the work, or I just wanted to, get clear.
Most times what would really just from my table stance, so to say, from that point of a private road, usually not built to some type of standard, like standard width or,
right.
Standard road, grade, design. That's most of the reason why something is private as opposed to a public road.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of times that would be right off the bat why we would probably stray away from that. But I don't know, at least off the top of my head, any private work. But I will get some information and see kind of where we were with the Glades and kind of how that came about, or if what or when or what it was actually was in there. That's kind of new to me. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I was surprised.
I think you're dating my time there maybe a little bit.
Yeah,
I
probably.
might have missed that, but I'll find that out. Matt or Cheryl will have probably a pretty good understanding of that.
Yeah. Okay, and I think that's it, but this is really wonderful. Thank you.
Well, thank you guys for
Yeah.
having me. I apologize for being so long-winded.
No, and thank you for all the kudos. That makes us feel
Yes.
good.
We're going a good way. We just baby steps. Just
Yes.
keep going.
Thanks.
Well, have a wonderful evening. I'm going to step out. If you guys do need anything though, please email Joyce to email me, however you need to get a hold of us.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Pam Boyd,
Oh, thank you.
a question about the Dexter
Perfect.
roundabout.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks, Al.
We can scan and send it for.
Oh, yeah,
We can.
well, Roy would already know
Yeah,
this,
yes,
but then,
well, I was gonna say that there's some stuff in here, the millage rates and stuff that are, it might be pertinent to next meeting. We can scan it and add it to our packet for next.
sure. Mhm. Oh, guess we still need to go here. Okay, okay, so on to G1. We have RAC resolution and continued review of charges. So we had this is a couple months ago, we have to get back into our memories here. But that was, we did this as a group, and then Bob, you took the notes and put it together and then included it. And there, let me think here. So I did have conversations with Joyce about this because, it's been talked about bus funding, us taking on more things. And for right now, since the township is still in the transportation planning, trying to, through SEMCOG and trying to get some type of program or process going, Joyce just suggested we stick with what we know and what we have in front of us. So there's some things in this resolution that probably should be like, we don't need to find out or, you know, educate ourselves on road materials and then talk with the road commission about it because they already have all of that. I mean, I'm being kind of silly, but, so, and then, you know, it's, as Adam was talking about different things, I think like the communication part of it, maybe we need to have, you know, subcommittees work on a communication plan. Another one work on the resolution, you know, the charges, polishing that up. And then we have Ian that was tasked with the special assessment policy a while ago. And now we have a better understanding, which, you know what, maybe, you know, this just dawned on me that maybe we should have you talk about your road funding first before we do the rest.
Well, for the sake of brevity, since we're 2+ hours in already, I think Adam covered a lot of it. Basically, what we were pulling and have pulled together is we know the gravel roads need maintenance on a certain schedule, whether it's 6 years, 8 years, we can put it in. We've got the good foundation. We're not talking about 8 to 12 inches. We're talking about 4 to 6 inches every cycle. And we know how many roads there are. We know what the mileage is. So we can take the data we've already got on the gravel roads and say approximately each year, and we can do 5 years, 10 years, whatever. We can pull a number for the grass.
So,
If we expand it to the paved roads have a different maintenance requirement. They're already paved. We can go back and find out when they were paved. At a certain point, Roy called it mill and fill. You pull the top 2 inches off, remill it, put it down. Then you put the emulsifier on a year later. And on every 5-year basis, you fill the cracks to keep it going. And then when you hit year 15, you take the top 2 inches off, you mill and fill, and you do it again. Costs are known, we can estimate inflation, we can go back into the database and say, all right, here are the 30 or so miles of paved roads in Scio Township. Here's where they started, here's where they are. We're now getting to the point of
Excuse me, I'm sorry, we cannot hear you. It looks like your recording has stopped. My apologies. I can unmute myself, but I can no longer hear you or see you other than that Rob and I are still on. You have technical difficulties. Thank you.
It looks like we lost recording at about 8:40, and it's now 8:48. So if this recording ends up in Township Hall records, know that we lost the recording before the meeting ended.
Ian, we see you, but we don't hear anything. Oh, we see, yeah.
passive.
It dropped.
For how
Things
long?
delegated by the board. We have the ability to say no.
You are back.
We can, as a group, get an assignment from the board and say no.
Well, we're going to revise our charge, and the fact that TAP no longer exists
Mhm.
is something that needs to be revised here. We could request clarification here because this is not anyone's job. It's just says integrate, and so there is nothing to start with.
Yeah, and I have not, I pulled up the PPP charge to read through it and then lots of other things I had to do, but we need to look at that because if there's sidewalks, any mention of sidewalks in there, then there's, you know, I think you're right, the board has to get clear on this.
I guess I'll get back to the comment I made. We're volunteers. We have a limited amount of time. What are our priorities? We seem to have figure out the SADs, figure out the roads, bringing up sidewalks. We've touched, we need as a group to sit down and look at our list of open items and go, these 3 or 4 are our highest priorities. We have to dedicate our time to them. The other stuff, can it wait? If yes, great, it waits. If no, all right, then we readjust our priorities. But we seem to dance around a lot. But then Bob brings us up, what are the action items?
Well, they're on the agenda.
But there's no priority.
Well, there is a priority because the board gave us the priority of a ballot language for next year, and they also want a plan. We can't just say, okay, we're gonna have the slush fund, just like we did with the SAD. I mean, the SAD had, you know, more, but I mean, there was a lot of issues with the SAD. But with this millage, we need to have a plan. We just can't say, oh, we want all this money and, you know,
No,
we're.
and I'm totally agreeing, but that, as we're listing, that is probably our highest priority.
Well, and the other thing is that there's a lot of, you know, like, they want a SAD policy last April. But we, you know, with everything that's changing, so this is why, and we meet once a month, you know, we need to have work sessions, we need to have subcommittees. You already a subcommittee, right? So, but we need to work. And I do a lot of work outside of this committee,
We know that.
not just with
Thank you.
boards,
Thank
but
you.
with this too.
No,
So
thank you.
I would
We
really
do
like
understand.
people to step up and take, you know, and thank you for taking the resolution and doing that. But we just need to do more of that.
Okay, we'll give assignments.
Okay, so let's get a subcommittee. So we need to have a plan with are we going to do we can't do private roads with taxpayer funds. So this is where the SAD policy, and Ian, do you need help with the SAD policy?
I'd like a sparring partner.
Okay,
I didn't understand that.
the SAD policy?
I didn't understand what it said.
Sparring,
Oh,
Sparring
Sparring
partner.
partner.
someone to bounce ideas off of.
You got me.
Okay, thank you.
I'll punch you anytime.
You just can't hit back.
So,
Okay,
I hope
Linda?
this doesn't come across as defensive, but we've been trying to have a discussion about this for months.
Which one?
This is the
The SAD?
SAD, and we
No.
haven't had a chance to, or whatever.
The funding.
The funding model. And we haven't had a chance to walk through pros and cons and all of that.
Well,
And so I think if this is the priority, we need to spend some time on this document that we presented a couple of times, but it was at the end of a meeting and it was 5 or 10 minutes.
well, but remember, when you were ready to present it, and then the board,
Active.
they took action and, you know, on the surplus funds, the millage levy, and then what was the other? There was a third part. Oh, the ARPA funds so that kind of threw you off because and in that meeting, I was really upset with them because I said to them, we have the road advisory committee. What are we supposed to do? Because if you keep changing and doing, you know, kind of whatever you want, then just disband us. So that's when they came back with the charge for at least the millage or levy. But they, again, I've already said this.
So we need to, I mean, truly the village is not even on tonight's agenda. So do we need to put it onto the October agenda?
No,
as
it's
a
here, road
village
maintenance
business?
improvement plans and funding continued.
9 o'clock
Okay.
already. We let this guy go way too long, by the way.
Well, it's important for us to be educated.
It's already-
Well, yes, but it's important for us to be educated because most of us don't have the background. And we also have residents that keep asking us for information that, if we don't, so. So Bob and Patrick, for the next meeting, I guess you would have to remove the special assessment out of there because you're not going to present that to the board.
Right.
So can we,
Yes.
presentation for next meeting? And I know you put a lot of work into that and I appreciate it.
And a lot of bacon.
A lot of bacon.
Bacon.
We do this over breakfast.
I was
Oh,
gonna say,
really?
there's an untold
Yes.
joke there.
That's
Alright.
worth the whole
Is
thing.
there a timeline on when we need to present the millage information that was been requested to the township?
Well, okay, so we have our fire SAD for November. Then after that, anytime we can present after that. Because it's gonna have to go through the process, there's public hearings and I believe there's one public hearing. It's a little bit different for millages, but then they have to approve our the plan and then the ballot language. So next year is the general election, for the big one. And there will be the August primary, the November, then there's February's there's 2 more elections in that year. I think there's 4 altogether, 4 periods. So then whenever I guess when we're ready and they decide which one to put it on. I mean, I can try to get more information, but then also at a higher level, they're talking about changing the primary dates.
Right, well, just to try and simplify it, so on the back of the packet that Adam handed out this year.
Right.
He did the math.
Yep.
So the board can charge up to 3 mills, without any kind of vote other than their own approval. I think they're looking to us to suggest what level.
We could, yes, and we could put a levy on for a vote as well.
And within this packet, it shows, that if you do the math on, it depends on what your goals are for the roads. Are we doing all the roads? Are we only,
That's
it's
just
$775,000
Right.
over 10 years.
So I would like to have a discussion in this group about whether we recommend all the roads or some
We
subset.
need to
That's,
start there, yes.
and that's on this, that question is built into this,
How do we,
that we'd
do
hope to get to.
we put it on an agenda as an agenda item?
ultimately, it's what do we recommend to the board?
Should we have this as our main
I think so.
for these other discussions in the presentation and then?
That's where I'm at is, this is probably the key to short-term deliverable. What's the next one? And let's pick the 2 or 3 that we actually have the time and the ability to do, and let's figure out a plan, and let's just do them.
Well, it was just suggested to us that if we could get them the list of what roads we think need attention
Early.
early, that they could address that. So that may be another deliverable we already have. I would
We have
say
that.
75% of the information we need there.
Yeah.
We just need to compile the list.
And that's item
I
number 2.
don't think we need permission from the township board to give that list to the road commission.
That's item number 2. What's next year's list of actions for the roads?
Well, but then the funding, that's where the funding comes in and that's where the board approves. But the board still has to approve whatever list because the money is connected to it. Anything that has to do with money, the board has to. So, and then private roads, I did get, we talked about this before, I did get some private road lists from Fran. They're newer, the ones that for developments, so that helps, and because if we're going to, I think that would, yeah, because some, like Arbor Point, a lot of people think those are private roads and they're not, so we have to include those, you know, make sure that they're in our list. Which roads, okay.
Well, that gives us enough fodder for the next 3 meetings, I think.
So, yes, and then if we have our subcommittees, you know, for SADS or whatever, then I think that they could, you know, do a little bit of a presentation. Kind of like, yeah,
I think we have most of this.
Don't we need direction from
Kerry,
the
just
board
because
though?
I'm out of town for.
We're talking 3 mils for roads, we're talking 3.65 for fire. All in the same year, right?
well, so the,
The fire.
we don't, so if we go back to the board with, let's say, we wanna have a levy that's voted by the people, we don't have to ask for 3 mils, we can say, we just need 1 mil because these are all the roads. So, Bob,
Yes,
did you hear that?
No,
I'm sorry.
Linda was talking.
Linda.
The amount of money depends on what we recommend going forward to the board. It's not gonna be a blank check, here's, you know, up to 3. If we're putting it to the voters, we need to be much more specific, and everything we've looked at says it 8/10 to a mil. Well, if we include all the roads, it's less than that if we just continue what we're doing with the gravel roads.
What's the goal?
What's the goal? But again, we will put it forward. We can, as a group, can then make a recommendation. Ultimately, it's up to the board to make the decision. We're just going to give them as much information as possible so that they can make the most educated decision based on the data that's out there at the moment.
But do we give them option 1, 2, and 3?
We can,
You know what I'm saying,
Yes.
based on millage.
Yeah.
one.
right? If you want to just do the gravel roads, this is probably what you need. If you want to do gravel and paved,
My only
here's
point
2.
is, in a small period of time, we're going to the township for
I
almost
hope-
7 mils.
But that's,
And that's 7 mils, because we may not ask for the 3 mils, it's up to 3 mils.
It's
But
still.
I guess-
But if they vote yes, then that's what they want, and if they vote no, then we're back to square one.
but that's the choice of the board. The board doesn't have to go to the voters. They've said that. They can change their mind. One of the risks of going to the voters, particularly after the fire, is people are tired of millages. That's a potential risk. But again, it's the board's call.
The board has already called that. They said it to present a ballot question for either a millage or a levy. So this is where the subcommittee comes in, like, here's the millage and here's the levy, what's the pros and cons and how much do we need?
So they are going to the voters.
Yes,
Asking for a ballot.
that was May 9th.
Okay, and you're also gonna have a ballot for the fire.
Different timing, but yes. But
I get
Yes,
it.
so Bob, I think
How
what
much-
you're saying,
how much different?
And again,
I know what you're, yeah.
the board can change their mind. My only point is, we didn't talk about the pros and cons of the board just deciding to spend the money because they don't have to go to the public versus the problem if you go to the public after the fire, if the public says no to the millage, the board has no political ability or is limited to then say, well, we're just gonna do it anyway. But again, it's their call. I'm indifferent. I'm gonna give them the data and it's their call.
I think it's our job to give them the information that gives them the substantiation.
Yes.
For when people come and say, why are you charging this? You
Yeah.
can say, here's our 10-year plan. Here's your road right here. Last time it was improved, here's the
Yes.
next time it's gonna be improved, and this is how we propose to pay for it.
Exactly.
Next question.
Yeah, and just to be with the millage, you don't wanna go 10 years because of the Headley rollback and you know, so they recommend, this is just in general, like 5 years at a time. You know, a levy, I mean, the fire SAD is freaking out a lot of people because they don't understand all the ins and outs. We don't have to use all of that, but they're asking for 10 years, so that's a long time. And they have their reasons for that, so really, and the the thing is that if we have a solid plan and we are maintaining the roads, you know, and people want their roads, everybody's agreed. Everybody, you know, everybody wants their roads improved, but this is basic infrastructure and we figure out a solid plan. Okay, so, all right, so let's do this. Next meeting. The road discussion, road maintenance improvement plans and funding continue. You two work on this special assessment policy. And Linda, I'm sorry, I know that you two were on the bus before, but that's scrap for right now.
Threw us under the bus. Off the bus.
They pulled you out from underneath the bus.
And Linda, what would you like to work on? Or
Unfortunately, for the next few months, I am
your strap?
extremely limited. The one thing I can do is continue to attend the board meetings and try and, you know, listen to what's going on with the planning commission and see if there's pieces that we need to address or what's being said at the meetings and how
Yes.
roads can jump in there.
And you know, the DDA, I had a conversation with Bob Stite, so I know that there's some things going on at the DDA regarding their roads, and if we are going to have the roads under us, or if they're going to take over their own roads, I mean, you're gonna hire an attorney or something to, and then, I don't know, there's a lot of things going on in the DDA too. So maybe that's where, you know, if there's roads in there, since, yeah.
Yes.
Okay, and I've got the board and everything else. Oh, wait a minute, we have two members that we could put anything on them because they're not here. Okay, so let's get to, any more?
No, that's helpful. Thank you.
Okay, we have public comments.
Are there any public comments? Yay, we got Rob Patterson and Pam Boyd. So Pam, do you want to go ahead first?
Thank you. I want to thank you for having Adam from Washtenaw County Road Commission. It was a very interesting presentation, and I look forward to another presentation on funding from them in the future. So thank you for having that with this meeting. I know it ran long. It was worth it. Thank you.
Thank you. Rob?
Is there any chance we could get the Washtenaw County Road Commission representatives about funding at the October meeting if funding sources and funding plans and work plans are going to be part of that meeting? And then I just want to remind the committee that we're going into the fall of 2023, and the committee started in the fall of 2021, I think. And so we're 2 years in. And the primary goal, my understanding of the primary goal of this committee to begin with, was to establish a clear, fair, and transparent SAD policy for when a neighborhood wanted to pave a road, to have a way of a mechanism of going about that was clear and fair. And in my opinion, that is primary. And then once you get that policy in place, then you can start talking about the roads millage and about dealing with all of the, oh, I'm sorry, Ian. As you put your head down in your hands, that puts more pressure on you. But the whole point here is that this clear policy, it seems to me to be primary to the roads millage funding suggestions that you're going to make to the board. Once you have a clear policy in place about the individual SADs, then you can start talking about, okay, here's how we can do the other roads. And
Rob, I'm sorry to interrupt, but the policy is important, but we may have the discussion that we're going to cover all roads except for private. So the SAD policy would just be for the private roads or that type of thing.
I see, and that would make the SAD policy irrelevant, because if you're going to do all the roads, then
Secondary.
Yeah.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so and then private roads they definitely still need a SAD, so. I mean, they don't have to, but they need a SAD policy if they want to improve their roads with a special assessment. But thank you for that.
Okay, Rob went on mute, so,
Oh,
I guess that cleared up
That's it?
that, and I don't need to rub my head anymore.
Is there a motion?
yes, oh,
Motion
to adjourn?
We keep losing video as well. This system has been really funky tonight, so we dropped off for 13 minutes, just FYI.
Can we get a second?
Second.
One second.
It's
You gotta put
9:12.
steps into the, running back and forth.
All in agreement to adjourn? Say aye. Aye. And you've got the time there, Bob?
Going for dinner.
Thank you, Ian, for keeping up with the Zoom computer troubles we had
Yeah,
tonight.
definitely challenged me tonight. Getting rusty.
Oh, well.
Okay, stop recording. Thank you, Rob.
Thanks, Rob and Pam.